This boy was seen as a loser by everyone at school, but one day, everything changed. He couldn't believe all the power he had now. His body was so strong that he was afraid he might go bald. He broke the record in the running test and did the same in the push-up exam. For the weightlifting test, there simply wasn't enough weight for him to use. All the students were watching, completely terrified. This was the boy they used to bully. He hadn't always been this strong. If only they had known, they would never have messed with him. But the truth is, things used to be very different. This boy was the only one who failed the advancement exam. While the whole class celebrated their success, Kannagi Minato felt an inexplicable emptiness. It was the third time he had failed. He was the student who stayed behind to clean the classroom. This lonely moment almost made him cry, realizing how useless he felt. One of his classmates said that all the students had to go to the school entrance. The reason was that a man named Isaac Kaise, a Class A hunter, had returned. He was once a student at this school before becoming a famous hunter. He was there to film a documentary about how he had been a great student before becoming famous. But the truth that wasn't shown to the cameras was this: Isaac Kaise was a horrible person who used to beat Minato every day for no reason. Remembering that guy made our protagonist tremble, but what Isaac Kaise told the cameras was that Minato was a great friend who always helped him when they studied together, even with money, since Minato's family was poor. Those lies were only meant to make Kaise look even better on camera. And since Minato didn't have the courage to speak up, he simply agreed with Isaac's words. While the reporters took pictures, Minato felt those memories burn in his mind. He truly hated that man. After the filming ended, our protagonist felt the emptiness of being weak, of not having the power to do anything. When he was younger, Minato loved reading books that told stories about the legendary founders who saved the world. When the Tower of Malevolence appeared and nearly destroyed humanity with the monsters that came out of it, incredible people rose up and saved the world. They were all amazing. One man defeated 10,000 soldiers using only a wooden stick. It could easily have been just a pencil. There was also a mage so powerful that she could cast spells without saying a single Fortunately, classmate and said he would convince the association to let Minato retake the test. He told him to meet at the Founders' Sanctuary later. That left the protagonist confused. The guy was awful, but if he was doing this just to improve his public image, it didn't matter. As long as Minato got a second chance, he would take it. Later at the Founders' Mausoleum, the cameras were recording the final scene. The filming focused on Isaac standing before the historic tomb, giving a grand speech. After the interview ended, the reporters thanked him, satisfied with the footage they had captured. Isaac acted like a polite celebrity, saying he couldn't wait to see the article. He asked. They eagerly pointed to a hidden passage, asking if that was what he was looking for. Suddenly, a voice called from behind. When Minato arrived, expecting to retake the exam, he saw what they were doing to him. This was a sacred place, the resting place of the people he admired most. When he tried to stop the damned looters, Isaac Kaise struck him with all the power of an A-class awakened being. The punch was brutal. Minato felt many things inside him break. The men shouted that they had taken everything valuable, everything that was inside. Minato felt like he was about to die, and yet all he could think about was how wrong it all was. They couldn't steal that. Isaac Kaise then grabbed Minato and said he knew everything about him, the weakest student obsessed with the ancestors who spent all his time in the library reading books. His perfect plan was to throw Minato into the river behind the sanctuary and make it look like he was the one who had desecrated the founder's tomb. The blow Minato received earlier was meant to kill him. When he was thrown into the water, he had no strength left. As he sank, he remembered how he used to train every day and study hard to achieve his dream, all in vain. Then at the bottom of the lake, lights began to glow around him. Despite the cold water, a comforting warmth emanated from them. Minato heard voices speaking about him being the vessel for this generation. The heroic spirits had been sealed in that place. In Minato's hand was the emblem of nothing. It did not grant its bearer any power. However, whoever possessed it could inherit the spirit of any founder. Minato had to choose which of the heroes he would form a contract with. Magic, endurance, swordsmanship, spear mastery, any of them. The protagonist then shouted that he chose all of them. He wanted all the powers. The heroes said it didn't work that way, but all of them were suddenly absorbed into the mark. Every soul was pulled inside the seal. Rusaki and his thieving friends were still near the lake when they heard the sound of an explosion in the water. By some miracle, one of the men had an umbrella. The three couldn't believe what they were seeing. The boy floating in front of them was Minato, the loser who had just died. When the protagonist landed in front of them, his expression was completely different, yet they still mocked him, saying that not even cockroaches were as resilient as he was. A stick on the ground seemed interesting to the protagonist. The two men laughed at him. "Are you going to fight? Do you think you're John Wick?" Minato wasn't intimidated and continued testing his movements. Then Risaki said in a serious tone, "Make sure he never comes out of the bottom of that lake again." One of the men drew his sword, promising to throw Minato back into the water. When the man attacked for real, he swung several times per second. Minato couldn't even see the strikes. He only felt the moment his opponent's body began to fall apart. Risaki and the fat man stood in disbelief at the scene before them. This couldn't be the same loser as before. The fat man unleashed his most powerful spell. Minato was known for having no mana, so he should have been destroyed instantly. But the protagonist simply pointed his finger, and without saying a word, a lightning bolt struck the spot. It wasn't hard to hit. The target was so large. Even so, Risaki was stunned. That was definitely magic cast without an incantation. The sword movement looked as if the holy swordsman himself was standing there. The spell resembled one used by the legendary mage. What Risaki couldn't understand was that all Thunder's 6 founders were now inside Minato. The protagonist declared that a new name would be written in history, and that Risaki would also be remembered, but as the first 1% of evil to be eliminated by the great Kanagato. As he approached, Risaki could only stare in horror, finally accepting the impossible truth. The boy he had discarded had just absorbed the souls of the founders through the emblem of the void. Inside Kanagi's mind, the founders were going wild. After centuries of being sealed, they were enjoying their newfound freedom, already arguing over who would take control of the new body first. Amid the chaos, the legendary swordsman Hanuki Heitiru spoke to Kanag, casually remarking that he wasn't surprised the boy remembered his name. He asked Kanag what his plan was, ignoring Risaki completely and pointing his attention toward a far greater threat right behind him. Focused, Kanaga turned to face Risaki, who was trembling with fear, trying to brag about being an A-rank hunter. Kanaga didn't waste a word. He threw a single punch that sent Risaki flying. Kanaga then shifted his focus to the mysterious bag, which radiated a dark aura. As he stared at it, a massive surge of power erupted from within, catching him off guard. Hanuki, however, simply watched calmly, a faint smile on his face. Meanwhile, back in the city, a monstrous 3-headed wolf was rampaging. A man shouted for someone named Kisaraj to handle it. Without hesitation, Kisaraj leapt into action. With incredible grace, he jumped onto the beast and brought his sword down in a cascading strike, defeating the A-rank monster with a single blow. The crowd went wild, cheering for the S-rank hunter. Kisaraj humbly thanked them before asking where Risaki was. One of the men replied that Risaki was probably busy with an interview, commenting on how nice it must be to be called the young prodigy. Kisaraj simply shrugged, noting that Risaki's fame was good for their guild's reputation. But as they were about to leave, a wave of terrifying pressure spread throughout the city. Panic erupted as civilians and even low-ranked hunters fainted. Kisaraj turned to see his own comrades struggling, realizing that even A and B-rank hunters couldn't withstand the pressure. He instantly knew that an S-class monster had appeared. The immense power was emanating from the founder's mausoleum. Back in the forest, a terrified Risaki struggled to stand, staring in horror as a colossal monster crawled out of the bag. He stammered, "Is that a demon? What is that thing?" Kanag explained that by stealing the relics, Risaki had broken the seal that held one of the original boss monsters from the tower. Inside Kanag's mind, Hinuki analyzed the beast with an expert's eye. He immediately recognized it as the embodiment of the void, a creature far beyond Sit's class. According to him, even its poisonous aura could kill thousands, and monsters like that were common in his time. It was too much for Risaki. He completely lost control and ran away, convinced that staying another second meant certain death. But Kanaga knew the instincts of a predator. He warned that running would only get him killed faster, but it was already too late. The moment Risaki moved, the monster attacked with terrifying speed, launching a massive tentacle straight at him. He barely managed to raise his sword before the tentacle pierced through his body. His chest was pierced. The same sword that once killed a dragon was now completely useless. The creature's tentacles spread across Risaki's body, draining his life force as his screams echoed through the forest. Kanag, however, only watched, knowing this was inevitable. As the former hero died, the spirit of Hinoki placed a hand on Kanag's shoulder. "Want to see my one-handed sword style?" he asked, attempting to take full control. The new and powerful body, but it was Kanag himself who stopped the argument. He set his own terms. No single founder would have control. His body would be shared among all of them. He declared that one day he would surpass each of them and prove his worth through strength. If they wanted to use his body, they would have to show him what true power was. Shocked by his sheer audacity, Hinoki only smiled and readied his blade. Seizing the moment, Hinoki took the first step, merging his consciousness with Kanag's and urging the others to follow. When Hinoki's spirit raised his sword, Kanaga's body mirrored the movement, striking at the monster's limbs. Guided by the skill of one of the founders, the blade sliced off one massive arm with a single clean cut. The beast retaliated with a furious strike, but Kanaga's body, now infused with another founder's agility, dodged with superhuman speed. Power continued to build as the spirits took turns, one granting him the strength to grab the creature's tentacles and slam it violently into the ground. The monster staggered as Kanag grabbed a bow, piercing its hide with arrows. He then unleashed a barrage of abilities: whirlwinds, fire breath, and ice attacks. When the beast tried a sneak attack from below, Kanag's eyes glowed yellow. The great mage within him took control, electrocuting the creature with lightning. Then, with one final powerful leap, Kanag soared above the monster. Hinoki took control, grabbed Risaki's broken sword, and executed his signature one-handed technique, the wave-cutting blade of Kuretati. The sword sliced the demon clean in half, ending its fury. As the two halves fell, a victorious smile finally spread across Kanag's face. Watching the entire battle from a nearby tree was a single crow. Elsewhere in the city, a man standing atop a skyscraper answered a phone call. Shocked, he heard that the monster had been defeated before he even arrived. He asked if any strong hunters had been at the scene, but the voice on the other end said that footage from the crow showed it was a student from the academy who had taken the monster down. The man, Tiara Midori, the strongest awakened being in the world, said he wanted to meet the student. The next morning, Midori sat atop a pile of monster corpses while calling the academy's director. He told him about the sex-class monster incident, clarifying that he wasn't the one who defeated it. According to the crow's footage, it was Kannagi Minato. Midori found it hard to believe, especially since Kanag was known for failing the hunter exam 3 years in a row. He then asked the director for a special favor. Back at the academy, all the students were talking about what had happened. The terrifying aura from the previous day had left most of them paralyzed, and now everyone was trying to guess who could have defeated such a monster. Meanwhile, Kanag staggered across the campus, leaning on a staff, his whole body trembling. He overheard their conversations, surprised that the incident had already become the school's hottest topic. Suddenly, a guy bumped into him, knocking him down and mocking the idea that a weakling like him could ever be an S-class killer. Kanagi knew the truth. He had defeated the demon, but only by letting the founders use his body. Now he was paying the price. The backlash from their power was agonizing. As he struggled to stand, a voice mocked him in his mind. It was Hinoki. reminding him of his bold promise to surpass them. His tone was challenging yet encouraging, pushing Kanag to pull himself together. Remembering his vow, Kanag ignored the pain and forced himself to stand again, silently reaffirming his goal. Hinoki laughed within him, urging him to show some determination. The spirit then examined the nearby students with a sigh of disappointment. The awakened ones of this era didn't seem any stronger than ordinary humans, far from the warriors of his time. He reflected that if the tower were to reappear now, the world would be doomed. But his thoughts were interrupted when he sensed an incredibly powerful aura nearby. Kanag noticed Hinoki's sudden tension, but the spirit brushed it off. At that moment, a teacher shouted for Kanag to come over. Assuming it was about his expulsion letter, he approached cautiously. After all, he had failed 3 times and had no more chances left. But to his complete shock, the teacher told him to go to the field for a re-evaluation. The news left Kanag frozen. Other students crowded around the windows, whispering excitedly. No one has ever gotten a hunter re-evaluation before. On the field, Kanag took a battle stance. The corridor falls silent. Kanag is not fully recovered, but he is determined. The first test is a 100-meter sprint. The student who had knocked as Kanag crosses the finish line in just 1.2 seconds, breaking the previous record of 2.7 seconds. Next is the 3,000-meter run, which he completes in 1 minute and 17 seconds, shattering the old record. It's the same story for every other test, push-ups, bench presses, or anything else. He doesn't just break the records, he more than doubles them. The students are completely speechless. Even Kanag wonders if the founders are secretly helping him, but Hinoki assures him that it's all him. Meanwhile, in the director's office, Midori is reviewing Kanag's file. The director admits that although Kanag's new physical scores are unbelievable, his real problem has always been his magic. For 3 years, every evaluation indicated his mana levels were 0, completely undetectable. That's why he was always considered a lost cause. Midori's secretary just smiles faintly, hinting that things are about to get interesting. Back on the field, Kanag faces the final test, the magic measurement. The instructor explains that he needs to channel his mana into a large fan and make it spin for 30 seconds. The current record is 402 rotations. As Kanag prepares, memories of failing this exact test year after year flood back. No matter how much effort he put in before, the fan had never even trembled under his attempts. His inability to feel mana had always held him back, but this time, it's different. For the first time, he can sense it flowing through him, originating from his right foot, spiraling through his body and returning once more. He realizes that his breathing can regulate and accelerate the flow, allowing him to release the energy through his right palm. When the teacher signals the start of the test, Kanag releases his mana. Instantly, the fan begins to spin at a breathtaking speed. The counter struggles to record the rapid acceleration as the force of the wind makes it difficult for the observers to even see the numbers. The speed continues to rise far beyond expectations, and before anyone can react, the machine explodes. The fan, now completely detached, shoots across the field like a blade. Students scream in panic as the object hurtles toward the main building, crashing directly into the director's office with a deafening impact. Inside, the director barely escapes the incoming debris, collapsing in shock at what just happened. Midori's secretary, stunned by the spectacle, can hardly process what she's seen. Midori, however, remains calm and simply laughs. To him, the resemblance between Kanag's abilities and his own is undeniable. According to Midori, there has only ever been one person before Kanag to produce an immeasurable score himself. The professor, still trying to make sense of what he has just witnessed, finally declares that Kanag has passed the hunter exam. A wave of excitement rushes through the students as they erupt in applause. Kanag hasn't just broken every record, he has surpassed every expectation. Looking down at his own hands, Kanag trembles in disbelief. He had spent years believing he was incapable of using magic, yet the power had been within him all along. From afar, Hinoki watches the scene with quiet satisfaction, having anticipated this outcome. Kanag now knows that everything has changed. By entrusting his body to the founders, he has unlocked the dormant potential that had been hidden within him all this time. Kanagi can't help but laugh, commenting inwardly that the one standing before him is far from ordinary. With the emblem of nothing marking his destiny, it's as if he had been waiting for this very moment for over a century. Before Kanag can think further, an overwhelming presence descends upon the field, sending a shockwave through the air. The sheer force of it leaves him momentarily speechless. His mind struggles to comprehend the explosion of energy, but Hinoki immediately recognizes the tremendous aura, the same one he sensed that morning. Standing before them, seemingly materializing from pure pressure, is the legendary Midori himself. When Kanag sees him, he is stunned, for Midori is the strongest hunter in existence. As Midori lands, he walks straight toward Kanag. He acknowledges Kanag's achievements in the hunter exam, offering words of recognition, but Kanag can barely respond. Midori then presents him with a new challenge, an additional test. He wants Kanag to land a single hit on him, the strongest hunter in the world. Hearing this, Kanag freezes in shock for a moment. Midori, only 23 years old, had earned the title of full-fledged hunter at the age of 9. His feats are legendary and unmatched throughout history. He has turned thousands of demons to ash, and his power is so overwhelming that even other hunters dare not face him. 10 years ago, he single-handedly eradicated the Pandemonium outbreak 10 years ago and the Kyokuso outbreak 5 years earlier. Both were contained by him. He is a living singularity. As Midori explains his challenge, Kanag stands in disbelief. However, Kanag is thrilled, urging Kanag to hand over his body immediately. Still, Midori explains the conditions in the simplest possible terms. Kanag has 1 minute to attack him. Whether he succeeds or fails, there will be no consequences. Midori will only counterattack once every 10 seconds, ensuring the challenge remains fair. There is no need for hesitation or doubt. Any ability, any weapon is allowed for Kanag, while Midori will refrain from using his own powers. To prove his sincerity, Midori summons a vast arsenal of weapons, offering them to Kanag. The sight of so many legendary weapons appearing in an instant only adds to the surreal nature of the challenge. Confusion clouds Kanag's thoughts, realizing he is about to fight the famous Midori in a one-on-one battle. Still uncertain, he hesitates before finally asking if he is truly free to use any weapon. In response, Midori casually picks up a katana, holding it lightly but firmly. With effortless precision, he slices the blade in half, as if it were nothing more than a fragile twig. He declares without the slightest hint of arrogance that his body surpasses the sharpness of any blade. Kanag barely has time to process this demonstration before Hinoki's impatience flares up. Frustration boils in his voice as he demands control. Unable to tolerate Midori's overwhelming confidence, his anger surges as he declares that Midori's words are unforgivable. Kanag can feel Hinoki's energy swelling, his presence amplifying as if ready to unleash his full strength. At that moment, Kanag realizes that Midori's power is comparable to that of the founders themselves. Against such strength, he knows he doesn't stand a real chance, yet there's no time to hesitate. Meanwhile, all the students have gathered to witness the fight. Without warning, Midori begins the countdown. A faint smile curves on his lips as he signals the start of the test. Kanag grips his sword and charges toward Midori, determined to strike. Hinoki questions whether Kanag truly intends to fight alone, insisting that it isn't fair, but Kanag ignores him and continues his assault. Even though he knows his efforts are futile, he believes that to become a legend he must rely on his own strength. Instead of borrowing power from the founders, he swings his sword at Midori, but Midori dodges effortlessly with the smallest of movements. Even as Kanag attacks relentlessly, Midori remains nonchalant, still speaking on his phone, casually asking which social media platform Kanag uses and remarking that the incident will surely be recorded and go viral. The students watch in disbelief, astonished that Midori can evade every strike without taking the fight seriously. Yet as Kanag continues his relentless assault, one student notices something strange about his movements. Observing closely, they see Kanag raise his sword, feinting a vertical strike before swiftly switching to a horizontal slash aimed at Midori's feet and throat. The execution is flawless, and Kanag is amazed at how naturally his body moves. Realizing that he isn't tiring, he wonders if this is the effect of surrendering to the founder's power. His thoughts are abruptly interrupted when Midori places a single finger on his forehead, preparing to flick him, and casually mentions that 10 seconds have already passed. Kanag barely dodges, but the released force obliterates the entire field. Seeing the destruction, Kanag realizes that if that flick had connected, his head would have been gone. Midori looks at his own hand in mild confusion, sensing no malice from Kanag, and wonders if he miscalculated his strength. Panic sets in for Kanag as he realizes he'll die at this rate. Desperately, he tries to recall the sensation of his strongest self. As he concentrates, a powerful aura erupts from him, catching Midori off guard. Kanag launches another attack, his speed rising rapidly. The students are awestruck, shouting that the cameras can't even keep up with his movements. Midori senses the shift in Kanag's presence, and wonders whether there's a specific condition for activating this power, or if Kanag's deliberately hiding it. Realizing that another 10 seconds have passed, Midori decides to attack lightly this time. He crouches, positioning his finger for another flick, but instead he taps Kanag's chest, sending him flying backward and crashing into the wall with immense force. Kanag coughs up blood, yet he finds the experience exhilarating, amazed that he's fighting the strongest awakened being in the world. He understands that if his body were the same as it was yesterday, he would already be dead from that blow. The realization makes him smile, knowing it means he's getting stronger. However, he also recognizes that his current ability is still not enough to pass Midori's test. Determined, he chooses to push forward with brute strength and charges at Midori once more. Suddenly, Midori appears right beside him, moving with unimaginable speed. The speed is unbelievable, making Kanag stop in his tracks. Apologizing, Midori says he has seen enough. He then states that the 30 seconds are over before striking Kanag on the back of the neck, causing him to slowly lose consciousness. As Kanag collapses, Midori remarks that he truly is a genius, though not yet on the same level as his peers. In the end, Kanag fails to fully release the power that Midori had sensed within him. Calling his secretary, Midori tells her they should head back, expressing mild disappointment with the outcome. At that moment, however, Kanag grabs his sword and Midori instantly feels a surge of intense energy behind him. Midori turns to see Kanag's body radiating power. Hinok, now speaking through Kanag, comments that the stubborn boy has finally fallen asleep, allowing him to take control. Stepping forward, Hinok suggests they extend the fight a little longer. Meanwhile, Kanaga's spirit, now separated from his body, panics as he watches Hinok take over, but Midori only smiles, recognizing the presence he had sensed earlier. He wonders whether it's an entirely different person or simply an ability at work. Either way, he understands one thing: Kanag has become a monster. Under Hinok's control, Kanag suddenly launches an attack, shouting at Midori not to get distracted. Midori immediately notices that his movements have changed. His speed and strength have reached an entirely new level. Suddenly, a sword slashes toward Midori's face and he ducks just in time to avoid it. Kanag swings again, forcing Midori to leap backward and create distance. Still in shock, Midori watches as Kanag quickly positions his sword for another strike. He swings once more, but Midori dodges just in time, causing the attack to hit the building behind him. The students inside the structure panic as they realize the danger. Midori observes that Kanaga's attacks have become unpredictable, though he can still anticipate the rhythm of his movements. It reminds him of ancient swordsmanship, a relentless torrent of flowing strikes. Raising his palm, Midori laughs and comments that such skill is indeed necessary to defeat someone of Sench rank like himself. He then lifts his hand again, intending to put Kanag to sleep once more, noting that only 40 seconds have passed. However, Kanag suddenly charges forward at incredible speed, swinging his sword and shouting that Midori won't be able to hit him. Midori quickly jumps back to evade the strike, laughing as he acknowledges Kanag's impressive skill. The students can hardly believe what they are witnessing. Midori is on the defensive. Kanag yells that Midori is boring and insists that he shouldn't hold back. He warns Midori that if he underestimates him, he'll regret it. Without hesitation, Kanag lunges again, but Midori just laughs and accepts the challenge. With a quick kick, Midori sends a small stone flying toward the pile of weapons behind him. Instantly, the weapons rise into the air. He leaps upward, catching Kanag off guard and grabs one of the hovering weapons. Excited, Kanag exclaims that Midori is finally going all out. They then engage in an intense aerial battle, clashing foot against foot and astonishing the students watching below. They grab every weapon within reach, shattering them into pieces with sheer force. Meanwhile, inside Kanag's body, the founders observe Hinoki unleashing his full power. They're impressed that Midori can keep up. The spirit of the old warrior suggests joining the fight, but another founder scolds him for being disrespectful. The great mage, silently observing, suddenly notices that Kanag is studying Hinoki's movements, trying to learn from them. He sees Hinoki shifting his center of gravity when leaping from below, but the sword in his hands breaks again. Frustrated by the weapon's poor quality, Hinoki feels a surge of anger. Midori, on the other hand, finds the fight exhilarating and fun. However, he soon realizes that there are no swords left and wonders if Kanag will resort to firearms. With a teasing grin, Midori shouts that only 10 seconds remain and mockingly asks what Hinoki plans to do. Straight for the student who had pushed Kanag earlier and seizes his sword. At that moment, Midori swiftly approaches, launching his fist toward Hinoki. The impact causes a loud explosion against the building. Fortunately, Hinoki dodges just in time and reappears in front of Midori. They resume their aerial duel, exchanging blows mid-air. Midori laughs, saying the fight is fun and suggesting they continue a little longer. Meanwhile, the students realize that the building is about to collapse. As the battle reaches the rooftop, Midori's secretary watches indifferently. Midori then places his hand on a massive fan and grips it tightly, causing cracks to form along its surface. He rips the fan from the building and aims it at Hinoki. With a powerful throw, he hurls it toward him. However, Midori is caught off guard when Hinoki, wielding his sword in one hand, slices the fan apart effortlessly. Using his one-handed sword style, the fan shatters into countless fragments, scattering through the air like glittering dust. Midori reacts with excitement, praising Hinoki's skill. However, Hinoki wastes no time and throws his sword at Midori. To his shock, the sword shatters upon impact. Midori raises his hand, aims at him, and calmly acknowledges that 60 seconds have passed before striking Hinoki and sending him crashing down. Hinoki curses under his breath, but before he can react, Kanag appears behind him and pushes him back toward the other founders. As Midori's attack approaches, Kanag manages to deflect it with a smooth motion, successfully dodging the blow. The unexpected maneuver leaves both Hinoki and Midori stunned. However, the impact breaks one of Kanag's hands. Despite the pain, appears to be a small outcome, much like a game of chess where both players possess equal skill. Despite its intensity, Hinoki knows it lasted only a brief moment. Watching in silent pride, he realizes that Kanag has opened a new path toward victory. Kanag, however, is shocked to see Midori stop his punch in time. Frustration fills him as he realizes he didn't land a clean hit. But then, to his surprise, Midori smiles and deliberately pulls Kanag's fist toward his own face. Before anyone can react, both of them collapse to the ground. The students watching the battle murmur in confusion, struggling to comprehend what just happened. Midori, still holding Kanag's unconscious body, calls his secretary Rin and informs her that it's time to leave. Rin arrives beside him and asks about the result. Midori confirms that Kanag passed and admits that he finds him interesting. However, he also realizes that he accidentally broke Kanag's arm and asks Rin to heal him. She agrees without hesitation. The students who overhear the conversation can hardly believe that Kanag succeeded. The realization quickly spreads and cheers erupt throughout the area as they celebrate Kanag's victory. He managed Bays, thanking her, and she congratulates him for passing the test. Still in disbelief, Kanag abruptly sits up, wondering if he truly managed to hit Midori. Before he can process the thought further, Midori suddenly appears beside him, amused by his reaction. Without lingering on the moment, Midori states that a pass is a pass. He admits that he took the battle seriously, especially during his consecutive attacks. Midori continues to praise Kannag's skill, his ability to dodge Midori's strongest strike and his impressive movements. He encourages Kanag to take pride in his accomplishment. Regaining his composure, Kanag accepts the compliment. Without hesitation, he focuses on the next step, eager to know what comes after passing. His question momentarily confuses Rin, who turns to Midori for an answer, equally unsure. Later that night, Kanag was at home helping his mother clean while she cooked in the kitchen. She casually asked how many guests would be coming. Kanag wasn't sure, so he just guessed one. His mother then reflected on the day, saying it had been a great event. Not only had Kanag passed the hunter exam, but he had also caught Midori's attention. She told him she was confident in his abilities, believing he could achieve anything as long as he worked hard enough. Kanag listened quietly, appreciating her words, but then his mother's expression changed. She looked worried about someone so famous visiting their home, joking that people might mistake their house for a dog kennel. Exasperated, Kanag quickly dismissed the idea, insisting that Midori wasn't the type to judge such things. After finishing his chores and helping his mother, Kanag finally collapsed onto his bed, but his mind was still stuck on the day's events. His eyes drifted to the card Midori had given him, and he felt a wave of uncertainty. He wondered why Midori hadn't thought more carefully about the situation. His mind went back to the battlefield that morning, remembering when Rin had knocked Midori down and twisted his leg. He could still recall Midori's cry of pain as Rin confronted him. At that moment, Midori reminded Kanag of something he had said earlier, that Kanag had agreed to become one of his companions if they won. Confused, Kanag denied ever saying such a thing. Rin, growing irritated, twisted Midori's leg even harder. Midori told Kanag that too many people were watching and suggested that he come to his house that night to discuss everything calmly. He promised to explain their choices and reveal their true enemies. Kanag wondered who those enemies could be. He knew the founders had already destroyed the tower, and that current hunters were tasked with eliminating monsters that escaped from the dimensional rift. He questioned whether there might be another reason, but before he could think any further, he drifted off to sleep. Suddenly, Hina and what was wrong decided who would take over his body. Before Rina could answer, the doorbell rang. Apologizing, Kanag guessed it might be Midori and suggested they continue the conversation later. He went to the door. It was dark. Panic flooded him. He called out to her and ran forward, but stopped abruptly when he noticed someone sitting in the kitchen. The stranger was calmly eating the food his mother had prepared, even complimenting the taste, all while ignoring the huge mess around him. In a mocking tone, the man told Kanag that he should discipline his mother. He even added that if Kanag wanted to impress guests, they would need to get better quality food. Kanag immediately demanded to know who he was and what he had done to his mother. The man didn't even flinch. Instead, he scolded Kanag for raising his voice. Then he introduced himself as Heitani Goru, an S-rank hunter and a colleague of Midori. Heitani then ordered Kanag to grab his things, saying they were moving to their base. Rage boiled inside Kanag. Without a second thought, he threw a punch at Heitani, but Heitani effortlessly dodged and suddenly appeared behind him, asking if Kanag was trying to challenge him. Kanag stayed silent, remembering his mother's words. She had promised to raise him proudly on her own after his father's death. He recalled her worn-out shoes that she still insisted on favorite tonkatsu for dinner. With renewed determination, Kanag glared at Heitani and demanded to know what he had done to his mother. Watching everything unfold, Hinok realized that Haitani was an S-rank hunter from a previous era. Hinok was furious at this man, thinking he was just another imitation of Midori, and decided it was time to step in. The founders who had seen Kanag fight Midori now understood how they should treat him from now on. Haitani, amused, only mocked Kanag, saying his angry expression was actually quite cute. He raised his hand to slap Kanag, but Kanag remained perfectly still, completely unfazed. Just as the strike was about to land, Kanag caught Haitani's hand effortlessly, and with surprising ease twisted it. The eldest founder was stunned. He recognized that technique from ancient battles against monsters. Suddenly, Haitani was hurled through the window, crashing through the garden wall, but he landed on his feet before even touching the ground. Regaining his stance, Haitani returned, trying to understand what had just happened. He wondered if what he had seen was Aikido. He recalled Kanaga's fight with Midori earlier that day. He had noticed Kanaga's immense aura and swordsmanship, but also a strange and unique power. Haitani acknowledged his resilience, remarking that Kanag was even tougher than Risak. Kanaga's patience was wearing thin. He demanded an answer, pressing Haitani to tell him what he had done to his mother, who was still inside, writhing in pain as poison spread through her body. Haitani just laughed. He sarcastically pointed out that Kanag didn't seem to understand what was happening. Then, with a grin, he finally told the truth. His mother had been in the way, so he put her to sleep with poison. Haitani smiled, adding that if she was lucky, she would only suffer minor side effects. He remained calm as Kanag stared at him in disbelief. Then Kanag asked why they would hurt the family of someone who might become their ally. Haitani only laughed at the word ally. He suddenly appeared behind Kanag, ready to strike. Kanag rarely managed to dodge the attack, but Haitani's relentless assault continued. As he attacked, Haitani declared that he would never be Kanaga's comrade. He was just a puppet following orders. He mocked Kanag, saying that when his loved ones became hostages, he would have no choice but to obey. He called him naive. Before Kanag could react, Haitani stomped on his foot and slashed him, asking sarcastically if he had been right. Kanag quickly pulled back, feeling a burning pain on his cheek. When he touched his face, he realized the poison was already spreading. Haitani smirked, raising his fingers now covered in sharp, needle-like spikes coated with venom. He taunted Kanag, saying the poison was already in his system. He then revealed that he could produce dozens of different toxins from his body, which he called the phantom insect venom's deadly vision. Haitani sighed, complaining about how inconvenient this mission was. He said that if he wanted, he could release a deadly toxic gas over a 5-kilometer radius, but doing so in the middle of the city wasn't an option. He then stated that the poison would kill Kanag within a minute, unless he agreed to join their organization. If he accepted, Haitani would give him the antidote, otherwise he would die. Kanaga's mind raced as he realized just how lethal the toxin truly was. Haitani knew it would be an inevitable death sentence for any normal person. Looking at his hand, Kanag called out to Valentine, the goddess of medicine, asking if she was within him. The founders turned to Valentine, who looked both confused and surprised. He apologized for summoning her so suddenly and asked if she could teach him how to neutralize the poison later. She hesitantly agreed. Irritated, Haitani released another wave of venom at him, shouting angrily and demanding to know what kind of nonsense Kanag was muttering. Kanag swiftly dodged the attack. Then he explained that the Aikido movement he had used earlier came from Kurudama, the god of hands. The old founder within him was astonished, realizing that Kanag had managed to copy the move after seeing it only once. Next, Kanag summoned Hinok, the exterminator of the army of 10,000, Shimmer Cox, the blue spear of destruction, and Margit, the celestial bow. He declared that he had studied and memorized all of them from the ancient records. He told Haitani that the founders Haitani once admired were now within him. This left Haitani completely dumbfounded, but instead of being afraid, he became furious. He shouted that he would show Kanag what true pain was. Haitani then lunged at him, his needle-covered hands ready to strike. Kanag leapt aside just in time, avoiding the blow. Haitani's strike hit a nearby tree, which withered and died instantly. Without hesitation, Haitani launched another attack, yelling that if Kanag kneeled and begged, he might get an antidote to lessen the pain. He warned that once the agony consumed him, his mind would never return to normal, he would be lost to madness, but Kanag remained silent, calmly waiting as Heitani's hand drew near. Just as Heitani reached him, Kanag swiftly slid to the side. He pressed his palm against Heitani's chest and activated Santok's fist. Heitani coughed up blood from the shockwave that reverberated inside him. The force sent him crashing into a lamppost. Without hesitation, Kanag followed up with a kick powered by Asun's feet of light, sending Heitani flying a great distance. Asun within him was stunned by the power, but Heitani still managed to stand, recovering quickly. In an instant, Kanag was in front of him again, striking with both hands. He dodged Heitani's counterattack, shattering several of his poisonous needles. Then he used the sharp beak assault of Corral, hitting Heitani in the stomach. Kanag followed with Ran's dragon claw, slashing across Heitani's chest, surprising even Ran, who resided within him. Heitani grabbed him, but Kanag immediately activated Lilak's flipper, launching Heitani high into the air. As he floated, Heitani was filled with disbelief. He knew the poison should have clouded Kanag's judgment and already affected his nervous system, yet Kanag was still moving strong and unharmed. Kannagi then summoned the Mage of Truth, Meotes Salantes Deus, and cast it upon Heitani. A massive burst of energy erupted, shocking everyone present. Hinok turned to the founders, asking if they had seen that. He told them that right after defeating Heitani, Kannagi began copying all of his movements, both physical and magical. Hinok added that he didn't care if Kannagi's power came from the emblem of the void. He simply found it fascinating. The founders agreed. Hinok then suggested that they train Kanag, convinced that if they did, he would become the strongest awakened being in existence. Meanwhile, elsewhere, hooded figures were leaping and sprinting across rooftops. One of them shouted for the others to hurry. He revealed that the guilds of Nebura were after Kanag, so they had to move fast and capture him before Nebura's people did. Suddenly Midori appeared right behind him. "There are really that many of you?" Midori asked calmly. The man froze in shock, but Midori continued, saying, "If there were 15, you must be the last one." Midori pointed a finger near the man's forehead, twisted his head slightly, and slammed him hard into the rooftop. He then contacted Rin using his raven's call. She answered immediately, saying she had arrived. She assured him there were no awakened nearby, but her next words truly surprised him. "Someone has already been here," Rin said. Midori remained silent, waiting for her to continue. Rin then explained that the intruder was Heitani, an S-rank hunter famous for his mastery of poisons. He had come looking for Kanag but was completely defeated. Midori's eyes drifted to the rooftop, where Heitani lay sprawled out, mouth slightly open. The sight made Midori wonder what exactly had happened. Shortly after they arrived at Kanag's house, Midori clasped his hands together, a bright smile spreading across his face as he praised Kanag. He genuinely admired him, saying he never expected Kanag to defeat Heitani. Without hesitation, he asked, "Were you exposed to the poison?" Kanag scratched his cheek, giving a shy little answer. "Both my mother and I are fine." Rin, unimpressed, crossed her arms. She reminded Kanag, "You wouldn't have survived the night without Valentine's help." The moment her name was mentioned, Valentine let out an audible groan. Exhausted but smiling faintly, Valentine quickly recognized her own efficient work, noting that finishing everything in just 5 seconds wasn't an easy task. She merely shrugged, murmuring that it wasn't difficult at all. Since the creator of the poison was right there, all it took were a few pricks to collect the necessary blood samples and find the antidote. Kanag was still trying to process everything, but he finally asked the question that had been bothering him. Was Heitani lying when he said he was Midori's comrade? Midori nodded immediately, confirming it was a lie. He added that many people use his name for their own benefit. With that cleared up, he turned back to Rin and asked if she was finished. As soon as he did, she appeared beside him and nodded, saying that all the damage had been repaired. Kanag's eyes widened in disbelief. He looked back at his house and sure enough, the window and the garden wall looked completely restored. With a bright smile, Midori suggested that they go inside to discuss Kanag's future. Kanag just stood there, frozen, feeling a mix of excitement and unease wash over him. The next day, a car was waiting for Kanag and his mother saw him off at the gate. She reminded him to check if he had forgotten anything, but Kanag assured her everything was fine and that she worried too much. She couldn't believe that the child she had raised was now heading to Midori's home. Midori had already promised Kanag's mother that he would take care of him and turn him into a great hunter. Hearing that made Kanag thrilled, but his mother still felt a bit anxious. Hiding her worry, she handed Kanag his lunchbox, telling him to eat since he had skipped breakfast. Even though he didn't really need to, Kanag accepted it without argument. Then his mother asked Midori directly if her son would be in danger. Midori immediately confirmed that he would. His mother then confessed that she had always struggled until now, and trust her son to Midori was a huge step for her. Still, as a mother, she couldn't help but feel uneasy. Sounding confident, Midori promised her that he would train Kanag until he had no weaknesses left. Hearing that, she finally agreed to let Kanag go with him. Once in the car, Ren, who was driving, glanced at Midori and asked if it was really right to make such a promise to Kanag's mother, especially since they didn't even know what would happen. Midori felt a brief moment of concern. He looked in the rearview mirror and saw Kanaga's mother still standing at the gate, giving her son some last-minute advice. She was reminding him how to wash his clothes properly and telling him not to sleep naked or he'd catch a cold. Her concern made a determined look flash across Midori's eyes. He silently promised himself that he would do his best. Meanwhile, Kanag held back his emotions and said his final goodbye. Just as he was about to get into the car, his mother reminded him to come home for New Year's. Once they finally drove off, Midori asked Kanag if he was all right. Kanag admitted that he had to suppress his emotions a lot. Midori leaned back in his seat and told him to just do whatever he felt like, whether that meant eating or resting. Looking around, Kanag noticed the lunchbox his mother had packed, neatly placed beside him. He opened it, his mother's words still fresh in his mind. When he lifted the lid, his eyes fell upon a small message of good luck, carefully placed on top of the pork cutlet. That simple gesture hit him deeply, stirring emotions he hadn't expected. He paused for a moment, thinking about all the care and sacrifices she had made for him. A quiet sense of gratitude filled his chest as he began to eat, though the meal came with the sting of unshed tears. Rin and Midori, sitting nearby, exchanged glances but remained silent, letting him process the moment in his own way as they continued their journey. When they finally arrived at their destination, Kanag was stunned. He gazed at the impressive building, the headquarters of Anti-Prophecy. Midori welcomed him, explaining that only a select few awakened were allowed to enter. The weight of that knowledge sank in. For a brief moment, Kanag felt overwhelmed, realizing what he was about to become part of. Inside one of the rooms, a man stood by the window, quietly observing their arrival. Without turning around, he spoke to someone else in the room, confirming that the new recruits had arrived. A girl with an unreadable expression asked if this was really about the newcomer. A young man replied that it was quite rare for them to gain a new comrade, but another man standing to the side with his arms crossed remained skeptical. He insisted that they should first find out if the newcomer was truly worthy of joining Anti-Prophecy. Meanwhile, outside the headquarters, Kanag stood frozen for a moment, struggling to fully grasp his surroundings. Questions swirled in his mind. What exactly is the Anti-Prophecy unit, and could it have any connection to the Intruder guild? Sensing his unease, Rin acknowledged that things weren't clear and apologized for not explaining earlier. She told him that she couldn't reveal everything to his mother because it was confidential, a matter of national secrecy. Those words struck Kanag more deeply than he expected. As they headed toward the building, Midori suggested they take his luggage to the quarters. They headed to the dormitory first. Rin offered to help, but Kanag refused, saying he could handle it on his own. Just as he was about to move, a sudden voice cut through the air, telling them to wait. The unexpected interruption startled him. He looked up and saw the young man from earlier standing above them. Without hesitation, the man declared that he would be the one to explain everything. Then in the same instant, he lunged forward with a powerful kick aimed directly at Kanag. Instinctively, Kanag raised his arms to block, but the sheer force shattered the ground beneath him. The impact sent a tremor through his body, yet he remained standing, bracing himself against the shock. The man seemed impressed. He acknowledged Kanag's resilience and even offered a rare word of praise. Intrigued, Kanag paused for a moment before asking who he was. Without hesitation, the man stepped back and landed gracefully on the ground. He proudly introduced himself as Hanada Rikataro, a member of the anti-prophecy unit and Kanagag's comrade. The revelation caught Kanagag off guard, but there was no time to hesitate. Hanada had been assigned to explain everything, and ready or not, the truth was about to be revealed. Meanwhile, Midori appeared completely unfazed. He simply asked Rin for a cup of tea. Rin nodded and served him one as the other two continued their sparring. Midori watched them calmly with a steady gaze. He asked Hanada why they were fighting if they were comrades. Hanada, still composed, explained that this served two purposes: to introduce Kanaga to the anti-prophecy unit and to test his abilities. The explanation lingered in Kanaga's mind, leaving him uncertain about what kind of test this really was. Without warning, Hanada moved again where the anti-prophecy unit came from. Kanag listened, but remained skeptical. He doubted that Hanada would give him a full explanation while still attacking him. As the exchange continued, Hanada paused for a moment to ask Kannag's name before proceeding. Without hesitation, he introduced himself as Kannagi Minato. Midori, still sipping his tea thoughtfully, wondered how Kanag had been tested repeatedly, first by the academy, then by himself, and even by an S-rank hunter. Now he was facing yet another challenge. He turned to Rin, asking aloud if Kanag would always have to face constant tests. Rin, appearing calm, said there was no way around it. After all, Kanag had been personally recruited. Meanwhile, Hanada kept delivering relentless kicks, but Kanag continued to block them with his hands. His endurance didn't falter. At one point, Hanada suddenly asked, "What is the role of a hunter?" Kanag didn't hesitate. "A hunter's job is to eliminate monsters that emerge from dimensional rifts," he answered firmly. Hanada gave him a thumbs up, confirming his answer was correct. He then compared the role of hunters to pest control, a simple but powerful analogy. Suddenly, Hanada dropped to the ground and shifted the subject with a new question. He asked Kanag about other dangers that exist outside the dimensional rifts. The question caught Kanag by surprise. He hesitated, then asked Hanada to clarify what he meant by other dangers. Hanada's expression darkened slightly as he explained that the world faces threats far worse than mere dimensional cracks. He spoke of terrifying events, the castle of the 10,000 demons, pandemonium from 10 that had left lasting scars on the world. But before he could even respond, Hanada suddenly lunged at him again. Instinctively, Kanag raised his arms and managed to block the attack, though the force of the blow sent him sliding. Catastrophes. He then added that Kanag would understand much more about them once he began training at the academy. As soon as Kanag regained his balance, his breathing steady, he barely had time to react. Hanada appeared above him in an instant, moving with incredible speed. Kanag didn't even have time to think before Hanada's leg came down in a crushing axe kick. Kanag barely managed to throw himself aside, dodging just in time as Hanada's foot struck the ground. A nearby tree took the full impact instead, splitting cleanly in half. The attack was so powerful that it left Kanag momentarily stunned. Hanada then straightened up, his tone shifting as he continued explaining. He revealed that events such as the Tower of Malevolence from 300 years ago weren't just disasters, they were large-scale invasions, direct assaults from another dimension. Kanag struggled to believe what he was hearing, trying to grasp the weight of those words. This wasn't just history, it was happening even now. Hanada stepped closer, his expression serious. He admitted that he didn't, the thought hanging as if what came next would change everything. He finally understood why today's awakened individuals seemed weaker than those from the era of the Tower. There simply weren't as many people who could match the strength of the original founders, and that truly bothered him. Torn between curiosity and concern, Kanag finally asked the question he had been holding back. What should we do? Hanada's response was firm. That's exactly why the anti-prophecy unit exists. He explained that the people who can foresee such threats and predict real catastrophes don't share that knowledge with the public. They only tell the elites, those capable of actually dealing with such dangers, and those elites, Hanada said, are the members of the anti-prophecy unit. Midori and Rin couldn't help but smile proudly when they heard that. Kanag realized that their entire purpose was to prevent those prophecies from ever coming true. Hanada told him that from that day forward he was officially part of their group. Hanada welcomed him warmly, saying that Kanag was the first person who had ever managed to block his kicks one after another. He extended his hand as a sign of acceptance, and Kanag shook it. Midori and Rin applauded, and then Hanada called out to the other awakened ones who had silently appeared above the house. Hanada asked what they planned to do, but they only stared for a moment before vanishing, which genuinely surprised Kanaga. Midori remarked that they disappeared like villains, but Hanada simply shook his head. He believed they wanted to see how things would unfold on their own. Hanada then told Midori to leave everything to him, and Midori departed. Afterward, Hanada helped Kanag with his belongings and offered to show him his dorm room, for which Kanag gratefully thanked him. That night, as he settled in, Kanag couldn't stop thinking about what this organization truly meant. It was all about dealing with prophecies in their world. He wondered if the founders had faced a similar crisis during the era of the Tower, and if he was now fighting against something that had already been foreseen. His thoughts made him anxious, but then a voice suddenly cut through his worry, telling him that he had simply been training. Startled, he turned to see Enoch and the other founders standing right there. He quickly apologized for not speaking to them sooner, but Enoch told him not to worry, they had already made a decision. As the founders, they had decided to train him to become the strongest awakened one, just like Midori. With their help, he could become the most powerful awakened of all, one of their very own disciples. Kanag was truly shocked, asking if they really wanted him as a disciple. Kanag nodded and said yes, though he jokingly added that it might lead to a sort of battle royale among them. Concerned, Kanag begged them not to fight over him. Kanag explained that's how things had started, but after observing him more closely, the founders changed their minds. Instead of using his body for their own gain, they found it far more interesting to train him. Enoch then told him that when Kanag defeated the poison user, he had actually copied all of the opponent's movements. He couldn't execute them perfectly, of course, but he learned the basics very quickly. Enoch asked if Kanag understood the importance of that, pointing out that it was likely due to his symbol of nothingness. However, what truly made him special was the speed at which he learned. Enoch explained that this ability was actually stronger than any of the founders' own talents. As Enoch spoke, Kanag felt tears well up in his eyes. He remembered the disappointed faces of his old instructors, those who told him he had no talent. Until now, no one had ever expected anything from him. Everything felt like a dream, especially since he had once been treated like garbage, constantly bullied for failing the hunter qualification test 3 times. He remembered the laughter of his classmates, their mocking voices telling him to just give up. His name had often been forgotten, lost in the crowd because no one cared enough to remember. No one had faith in his future, and he had grown used to being ignored. But now, 2 of the most renowned figures, Midori and Enoch, were truly acknowledging him. He couldn't believe it. It made him question whether he even deserved this sudden happiness. He had admired them from afar for years, never imagining that they would actually trust him. Enoch noticed his reaction, approached him with a comforting smile and placed a hand on his shoulder. He told Kanag not to let his emotions take over. Then the truth was revealed. Their true souls resided within him, especially when he slept. This presence meant that he could access a space not bound by time or dimension. Knowing this, they created a rigorous training schedule for him. Every afternoon, he trained with the anti-prophecy unit, and at night in his dreams he continued his lessons. Peaceful sleep became a thing of the past, but he was already prepared for the challenge. He accepted their guidance immediately, determined to follow everything they said. The night passed and morning arrived. In the bathroom, Hanada was washing his face when he saw Kanag walk in. They exchanged greetings, but Kanag still looked extremely tired. He was clearly exhausted and admitted that he hadn't yet adjusted to the demanding schedule. Hanada understood completely, remembering how he himself had struggled when he first started at the dormitory. But then something unexpected caught Hanada.
Awakened, Hanada impulsively threw a quick kick. Even with an almost effortless movement, the man simply lowered his head, spat out the water in his mouth, and walked away. He didn't even look back. He ignored Hanada's silly morning prank, saying he had no patience for that kind of thing so early, and that he was heading to the cafeteria first. Hanada was left in disbelief. He realized that his attack had been faster than yesterday, yet it had been deflected so easily. Moments later, in the cafeteria, Hanada saw a good place to sit and walked over to a woman who was eating some fruit. He asked if she minded them joining her, and she gave a short, brusque nod of approval. Hanada took the chance, sat in front of her, and gestured for the man to sit beside him. Then he recognized her. She was one of Hanada's comrades from yesterday, but she still seemed distant. She spoke to him formally, making it clear she didn't really want him there. Even so, he greeted her and introduced himself. Her indifference was immediate. She wasn't interested in learning his name, and certainly didn't plan to remember it. She even lifted her fork, pointed it at him, and declared that she would only recognize his name when she deemed him worthy. Until then, training was the priority. He would have to accompany her on a mission to dispel a prophecy. This prophecy dated back to 1945, when people found the first book of prophecies buried beneath the Antarctic ice, 3,000 meters deep. They called it the Book of Destruction. The writing was crude, almost like a child's scribbles, but it predicted a catastrophic future. It said that 80 years later, the world would face a devastating attack and a series of apocalyptic disasters. The words were so heavy that everyone took them seriously. Later, while they were driving, she asked whether the world believed in the book's dark predictions. He thought for a moment, then looked at her, still not knowing her name. But before he could ask, she said there was no need for introductions. She only wanted his answer. He believed the prophecies had to be accurate, but she reacted immediately. She mocked his answer, practically questioning his intelligence. She said that if even one thing from the Book of Destruction came true, the world would end. That revelation left him stunned. As they continued talking, he turned to Hanada and asked how many prophecies had actually been recorded. Hanada guessed around 200, and that left him speechless. He couldn't help but wonder if the world was already beyond saving. But Midori assured him, saying they had already prevented almost 180 of those prophecies, which completely amazed him. Still trying to grasp everything, he asked again why the world believed so much in the book. The woman explained that an explorer named Bernard Russell found the Book of Destruction. As soon as Bernard opened it, the first page read, "Hello, Bernard," followed by a precise timestamp. March 17, 1945, at 11:35 a.m., on a sunny day, the exact moment he discovered it. That terrifying accuracy left no room for doubt. Hours later, they arrived at their destination, the Sumida district in Tokyo. An intermediate-level dimensional rift had opened there. As they approached, the guards blocked their way, firmly stating that the area was off-limits. But they simply ignored the warnings, passed the guards with incredible speed, and left them momentarily confused. He hesitated, wondering if it was really right to continue, but Hanada quickly reassured him that it was. The woman then began explaining the major crisis they were facing. She said that huge problems like World War III, the dark side of the moon, an invasive pandemic, and floating trees were all considered emergencies. Among them, the outbreak of pandemonium, which Hanada managed to stop, was especially serious. Although the Book of Destruction was well known, it was only one among many magical books scattered around the world, The job of the anti-prophecy unit was to gather information, analyze predictions, and act before things happened. She then went over the different threat levels they faced. A level 3, for example, meant one or more regions being destroyed. Level 2 was a national emergency, while level 1 affected the planet's environment as a whole. Then there was a special level reserved for when the world itself was on the brink of destruction. He listened carefully, and upon realizing the severity of everything, he became alarmed. He quickly asked whether these missions now depended entirely on them. The woman didn't hesitate. She confirmed that yes, these responsibilities came with being part of the anti-prophecy unit. Shortly after, Zarek and his team spotted them crossing the caution line and immediately confronted them. Kisaraj, thinking they were just civilians, warned them to turn back, explaining how dangerous the area was. But she ignored his concerns, stating that today's prophecy was a level 3 event. The dimensional fissure ahead looked like a B-class intermediate anomaly, but it was actually a far greater threat, a level 3 disaster codenamed Yellow Journal. She was sure its hardness level would rise, and almost on cue, it began to widen at an alarming rate. Kisaraj turned, his eyes wide with horror, as the rift fully opened. Then a wave of creatures began to emerge, each one more monstrous than the previous one. He commanded his team sharply to prepare for battle, but the response was immediate and brutal. The creatures overwhelmed his forces within seconds, knocking them down with little resistance. Panic set in, and he cursed under his breath when he realized that even B and C-ranked hunters were struggling to stand on their feet. Then his attention shifted to something even more dangerous, the immense pressure coming from a boss-level monster. As he watched the newcomers advance, Kisaraj tried to intervene once more, warning them to fall back. But before he could say anything else, the woman pressed her hand to the ground and cast a spell called Trismegistos. Instantly, spears burst from the earth, impaling the creatures in a swift and merciless strike. Their bodies collapsed lifelessly as blood pooled around them. Hanada launched his own attack as well. He moved forward with incredible speed, gliding fluidly across the battlefield and taking down every enemy in his path with precise, calculated movements. Kisaraj watched everything speechless. He had always believed himself to be formidable as an S-ranked hunter, but these people were clearly far beyond him. He simply couldn't figure out who they were or where they had come from. Then the woman turned to Kisaraj and without hesitation told him to retreat. As far as they were concerned, he was just a civilian in this situation. Kisaraj's eyes dropped to his hand, where he saw an emblem imprinted on his skin. Recognition spread across his face. He realized they weren't there by coincidence. They were government agents. Before he could fully process what that meant, a massive hand burst from the dimensional rift, tearing it open even further. As the fissure widened, an imposing beast emerged. It was a De Leon, a being far beyond S-rank, towering over them, its monstrous form radiating an overwhelming presence. Without hesitation, the woman charged forward, ready to strike. Kisaraj shouted, warning her not to be reckless, but she ignored his concerns. Together, they launched their attack, completely unfazed by the threat before them. Hanada quickly began striking the beastman with a rapid series of kicks, only to realize in shock that his attacks had no effect. The creature's anti-physical armor rendered his blows useless, forcing him to retreat just as the monster lunged toward the woman. Without a moment's hesitation, she began gathering energy in front of her, preparing to counterattack. But before she could respond, Kannagi suddenly appeared between them. He halted the beastman's strike using nothing but his bare hand. The impact caused the beastman to erupt in a burst of energy, stunning everyone for a moment. When the dust settled, Hanada recognized the attack. It was a penetration strike. What truly surprised him, however, was that Kannagi had taken down an S-rank monster with a single blow. He realized that Kannagi's strength had increased dramatically overnight. Even though the woman claimed that kind of power wasn't necessary, he knew that when facing an enemy with high physical resistance, attacking from the inside was the most effective tactic. He had learned this from Antak, the fist saint, who had taught him the basics of penetration attacks the previous night. After that, Kannagi turned to the girl and asked her name, saying that since she had saved him, he at least deserved to know. She replied cheerfully that her name was Ai. There was no time to think. Hanada rushed back toward the battlefield, preparing to face the new wave of monsters emerging from the rift. The woman didn't hesitate. She unleashed her own attack, drenching her enemies in liquid mercury, then igniting it in a powerful explosion with her skill, Mercurius Reject. Together they pressed forward, realizing Kannagi had been right. Shattering their enemies from within was proving far more effective. Determined to continue, she signaled to Hanada. Without hesitation, the two of them headed straight for the dimensional rift, while Kisaraj could only watch in disbelief from behind. He knew that the world beyond the rift was something entirely different, a realm unknown, filled with unimaginable dangers. Entering it was pure madness. Before he could react, they had already leapt forward, diving through the rift without a second thought. Kisaraj stood there, surrounded by the lifeless bodies of A-class monsters. Then it hit him. These two weren't ordinary fighters. They had to be part of that rumored secret organization. The moment they entered the dimension, an overwhelming swarm of creatures awaited them. A quickly assessed the situation. Noticing that the monsters were identical to those outside, she raised her hand with perfect precision and conjured a barrage of mercury spears, instantly impaling the creatures. Kanag, still running, watched her technique and recognized her immense power. He finally understood why she was considered the strongest area of effect fighter within the anti-prophecy unit. After defeating the remaining enemies, A now stood before an enormous bear-type monster. Just as she prepared to strike, however, Hanada leapt toward it first. The bear saw him, and the bear swung its claws, but Hanada dodged by leaping onto the roof. He then followed up with a barrage of kicks around the beast. Kanag watched in amazement as Hanada moved so effortlessly, laughing the whole time. But then, to his shock, Kanag suddenly rushed toward the bear and unleashed a flurry of kicks, exactly like Hanada had done. He even asked Hanada if it looked similar to his technique. Hanada was surprised, but he couldn't help smiling in admiration. Once they defeated the monster, they pushed forward. A noticed that the farther they went, the fewer enemies they encountered. Eventually, they reached a large open area that resembled an arena. Suddenly, they felt an aura surrounding them and knew something was coming. Then, to their shock, an enormous, enraged warrior minotaur leapt out in front of them. It wasn't just any minotaur. This was a blind boss with triple S-rank power. Hanada and Kanag were stunned by its massive size, but A simply stood there indifferently, wondering if this really was the boss. Then a rain of spears shot out from the portal behind it. A shouted for the others to attack with everything they had, saying that she would deal with whatever came next. Hearing this, Hanada began to channel his energy, while Kanag stood in the back, impressed by both of them. But deep down, he knew their strength probably wouldn't be enough to defeat the beast. When Hanada heard him say that, he was shocked that Kannagi doubted their strongest attacks. Even with their barrage of magic, the beast simply swung its massive weapon, created a crater in the ground, and sent powerful shockwaves through the arena. When the dust settled, they were stunned. The creature was completely unscathed. Even after all their powerful blows, the group prepared to attack again. When Kanag readied himself, he suddenly heard someone praising A's talent. He recognized the voice. It was Kilik, the spirit of his founder. Kilik is an alchemist who was worried that A, with all her purity, agility, and incredible strength, might waste her talent by dying so young in this fight. Kilik said that A had done her best, but this minotaur existed on a completely different level of power. She had underestimated the monster's physical resistance, which was at a full 100%. Growing more concerned, Kanag asked what he should do, but Kilik only laughed. Meanwhile, Hanada and A were genuinely struggling against the beast. They realized they should have brought someone skilled in magic. When A looked toward Kanag, she was stunned by the strange energy emanating from his body. Kanag had surrendered control of his body to Killick, who then cast his powerful spell, Mercurius, directly at the beast's legs. The spell froze the lower half of its body, leaving A completely astonished. She was shocked not only because Kanag used the same type of ability she did, but also because he used it in a way that completely immobilized the monster. Killick, still controlling Kanag's body, glared seriously at A and called her a fool. He scolded her for not being flexible enough with her expertise, saying that she still needed to learn how to control substances in 3 different forms to truly become an alchemist. As Killick spoke, he simultaneously filled the Minotaur's entire body with mercury. As the liquid metal began to spill from the monster's mouth, he cast a boiling spell. The mercury inside the beast heated rapidly, boiling from within, and its toxic vapors spread throughout the arena, making it difficult for the others to breathe. A watched in awe, realizing that Killick hadn't used brute strength at all. He had used extreme temperatures to bring the monster down. While the Minotaur writhed in agony, its body overheated from the inside. While casting the spell, Killick casually told Kanag that he wanted to make A his disciple. Kanag, however, brushed it off as a joke. Eventually, the boiling mercury overwhelmed the Minotaur, reducing it to an inert heap on the ground. And just like that, the day's mission, defeating the boss, classified as a level 3 prophecy, ended in victory. A watched in disbelief, unable to comprehend what she had just seen. Kanag had used an ability that should only be possible for an awakened being living inside a crest. She knew he had to be in the same class as Rico, yet he had managed to use alchemy at her level. Still shocked, she demanded to know who Kanag really was. With a confident smile, Kanag extended his hand and introduced himself. A, though irritated yet intrigued, reluctantly shook his hand, saying that she would definitely remember him. Hinata smiled happily, seeing Kanag finally receive recognition from A. Meanwhile, Kisaraj and his men were still waiting outside. To their shock, the dimensional rift began to close. Just as it was about to seal completely, the trio leapt out in time. Kanag asked if the mission was officially over and was informed that they simply needed to report back to headquarters. As they discussed what to do, Kisaraj approached them, thanking them for saving his team. He promised he wouldn't try to uncover their identities or... He couldn't explain what had happened inside. He thanked them for understanding and suggested that they include details about the emblem in their report. That would explain everything to the authorities. As the trio started to walk away, Zarate offered his help in case they ever got into trouble. But A turned back and said they would probably never meet again, telling him he should return to his normal life. Hearing this, Kisaraj realized that in the end, they were just civilians, people living in a world he could never reach. On May 11th, a red flash streaked across the streets of the Yone province village. A guard spotted it, but was completely perplexed, unable to identify what it was. Then, suddenly, a deafening boom tore through the sky above the village. Back at the Anti-Prophecy HQ, the trio stepped out of the car, and Kaus reminded them they still needed to write their report for headquarters. But then Renata received a message on his phone. They were being summoned to the laboratory. This was highly unusual, especially right after a mission. Curious, they headed to the Anti-Prophecy headquarters lab where 2 people were already waiting. One person stood on a stage, the other sat in the stands. Then, in a truly authoritative voice, someone remarked that Kenny had taken too long to deal with a level 3 disaster. Kanag recognized him immediately. It was the red-haired man from before. A, however, was furious at his condescending attitude. She was irritated that he acted like the leader when he wasn't. Hinata quickly intervened to calm things down, asking what Director Kurihara needed. It turned out that the man on the stage was the director himself. Once everyone settled, he displayed a video sent by the analysis team. The video showed a glowing piece of charcoal, which the director explained was a prophecy grimoire. They had found it in a volcanic region. It had been analyzing it ever since. Ken wondered if it was even possible to read a grimoire in that damaged state, but the director, adjusting his glasses, revealed that they had extracted some information using AI technology and X-rays, although its full meaning was still unclear. What they had managed to decipher was a prophecy that clearly mentioned Japan. Everyone in the room was shocked, especially Ken, because this was a new prophecy they had never encountered before. The director continued and explained that anti-prophecy research was extremely advanced, gathering information from all over the world. Finding an unknown prophecy like this was highly unusual, but this situation was different. The red-haired man understood immediately. The four of them needed to investigate. The director praised his intuition and explained that this mission would normally go to the regular members, but they were currently unavailable. Hearing this, Kanag realized this must be why Midori wasn't present when they returned. The director then ordered them to depart immediately, promising more details by email. Kanag was surprised they were receiving another mission so quickly, but the red-haired man simply told him he would get used to it. Feeling increasingly uneasy, Kanag clenched his fists as a frightening thought crossed his mind. This time, the fate of the world might truly be at stake. Su slammed his hand on the table and stood up. In a firm, authoritative tone, he announced that he and his 3 subordinates accepted the mission. Ken was clearly irritated. He was acting like the boss again. As they left, the director gave them one final warning. He told them to be cautious, as they still didn't know how severe this mission would be. He also reminded them that even if the prophecy began to unfold, they would have to wait for the main force before taking action. In the car, Kanag felt uneasy about all the unknown dangers of the mission. In the front seat, Su suggested they rest for a while. He noted that Kannagi had just completed his first mission, but A, driven by pride, refused. She insisted that he had no right to give her orders. Surprisingly, however, both Raneda and Kanag accepted the offer immediately and fell asleep within moments. Su was determined to stay awake and fought off the fatigue, but as the night went on, exhaustion eventually overtook her as well. Sometime later, the car stopped. A woke up and realized the vehicle was empty. Alarmed, she ran outside and found the others standing on a cliff, staring at a bright light below them. What she saw left her in complete disbelief. An enormous magic circle spread across the ground on a scale far beyond anything they had imagined. Raneda quickly grasped the gravity of the situation. It was far worse than they expected. The prophecy was almost complete. Skeletal figures were emerging from the ground, still trapped within massive crystals. Their eerie glow cast an ominous light across the entire area. A chill ran down their spines as they realized they might already be too late. These skeletons were the 23 villagers mentioned in the report. Su recalled a similar incident from the past. 30 years ago, the Wakayama mansion had mysteriously vanished, and a dimensional rift had nearly opened. As he explained this, the enormous pillar at the center of the magic circle began erupting with bursts of energy. Noticing this, the explosion urged them to move quickly. Haneda drew his sword and asked what they should do. Su revealed that they had to stop. A quickly reminded them of the director's orders. They had been instructed to wait for further commands. But before they could discuss it, they felt a massive aura behind them. When they turned around, they saw Kanag covered in an overwhelming energy, ready to fight. The group immediately noticed that Kanag seemed much stronger than before. Even so, Su remained unfazed. He simply smiled, stepped forward, and told the others to follow him. They all ran after him, though A warned him not to act so recklessly. As they descended toward the magic circle, Rinak and the mage suddenly caught a scent in the air. It seemed strangely familiar, an aroma they had encountered many times in their lives. The ground shook violently, and with an explosion, a massive hand burst out from underground. Hinoke's eyes widened in shock. He now knew exactly what they were smelling. It was the scent of a forbidden technique, the very prophecy written in the Book of Scorching Heat. Hinoke explained that long ago, during the A period, an awakener named Bando Shidima, leader of the Black Magus, committed genocide. The Onmyo-jigais eventually killed him, but an entire village had been caught in the chaos. Shidima collected the blood of the fallen villagers and used it to draw a magic circle, ensuring he would be reborn 1,000 years later. His goal was to devour everyone and rule the world as a demon king. Before dying, he left behind a forbidden technique showing how living beings would be sacrificed for his resurrection. Now, in the present, Shidima had reincarnated as a boss whose rank no one knew. His mission was clear: to fulfill the prophecy of the scorching heat. He looked at his hands and grimaced, realizing he had returned with far less power than expected. He wondered whether there had not been enough sacrifices for the ritual. As he looked around, he noted with amusement that even after 1,000 years, the place had not changed at all. But his lips curled into a maniacal smile when he saw the anti-prophecy unit approaching. To him, they were merely more sacrifices. Channeling his dark arts, he unleashed the yin plate, causing a massive explosion directly beneath the charging anti-prophecy unit. Kannagi became alarmed as the blast engulfed Hanada and Kane, but they were unharmed once the dust had settled. Then his expression darkened as he saw a dark magic circle appear where they had landed. It was the dark art of the realm of death. Hundreds of spirits emerged from the circle, extending their ghostly hands to seize Hanada and Kane. They fought them off, quickly realizing that Shidima was far more skilled than they had expected. As Shidima watched his spell take effect, he suddenly sensed something behind him. It was Kanag attacking from surprise. Shidima dodged effortlessly, bending and slipping past the strike without any effort. Smirking, he called Kanag an amateur and then launched another yin plate directly beneath him. The explosion erupted, but to Shidima's surprise, Kanag was unharmed. Kanag counterattacked with his thunderbolt-ad ability, but Shidima blocked it with his own dark magic. Even though he stopped the attack, Shidima was impressed by Kanag's choice of technique. Through the smoke, Su approached from behind Shidima and used his spell Chrysanthemum, launching a barrage of sharp knives toward him. Shidima was startled, but dodged by leaping into the air. While he was airborne, Su cast another spell, having already expected that such a weak attack wouldn't bring him down. Su struck his weapon against the ground and used his ability, causing knives to rain from the sky. But Shidima simply smiled, calling it a mere rain of lights. Then he transformed his hand into a shield to block the attack, though the recoil was significant. After blocking, Shidima realized that Su was probably the strongest among them. Kanag, watching from the side, thought that Shidima's power was limitless, completely different from any enemy they had ever faced. Shidima himself seemed even stronger than the founders. As Kanag thought this, he heard his friend shouting from behind. He turned and was shocked to see Kane and Hanada being struck by dark art abilities. They managed to evade the attack and began charging toward Shidima, who was still locked in battle with Su. As they closed in, Shidima summoned 3 skeletal demons to deal with Kane and Hanada. Hanada saw one demon appear right in front of him and kicked it, but to his surprise, it did absolutely nothing. The bodies of these monsters were as tough as the minotaurs they had faced before. As Shidima and Su continued exchanging blow after blow, one of the skeletal demons stood directly in front of Kanag, blocking his path. Shidima even mocked Su, declaring that he would receive no help from his friends. But immediately after Shidima said that, Su struck him directly in the shoulder. "I don't need help," he declared. Then he pointed at Shidima. "Stay back. I trust only my own strength." Shidima simply wiped the blood from his wound and began screaming like a madman, shouting that he didn't need anyone either, and that he would devour them all. With that, he charged straight at Su, who barely managed to block the attack just a few centimeters from his body. As Su struggled to withstand Shidima's relentless assault, he heard someone calling his name from behind. It was Kanag, running directly at Shidima. Shidima was surprised to see Kanag, especially because he had already sent a demon to stop him. He quickly looked back and saw the others still fighting their demons, but the one he had sent after Kanag was sliced clean in half. Even Su was impressed by the attack. Kanag then suggested that they should fight together to defeat Shidima. Su was shocked for a moment. Kane and Akon hadn't even defeated their own opponents yet, but this guy had already done so, and now he was offering help. But Su's pride was stronger. He completely rejected Kanag's offer, declaring, "I don't need anyone's help. I'm more than enough to fight alone." Kanag couldn't believe it, but before they could argue further, Shidima suddenly approached. He released his technique, Magatsu's breath, and a powerful beam was fired directly at the two of them. Su managed to block, but Kanag was thrown back, his body struck hard by the devastating blast. He slammed into a tree, and his vision began to blur as he started to lose consciousness. As he drifted into unconsciousness, he saw Hinoke and the Major Spirit standing right in front of him. Hinoke told him that he had fainted, which is why they had summoned him into his own consciousness. Even with his body bruised, battered, and tortured by pain, Kanag tried to stand, desperately asking them to send him back. He had to fight. But before they could reply, a deep and authoritative voice echoed through the space, ordering him to step back. Meanwhile, outside, Su struggled to defend against Shidima's relentless attacks. Shidima smiled, even praising Su for thinking like him, believing that neither of them needed anyone else in battle. With a sinister grin and his insatiable desire to devour everything, he put all his power into his next strike. He struck with such force that Su's sword shattered in half. Although stunned, Su quickly summoned another blade and swung it at Shidima. But Shidima dodged effortlessly, bending backward with almost supernatural flexibility. Shidima clearly seemed to be enjoying himself more and more as Su continued fighting. Meanwhile, back in the spiritual realm, Kanag's spirit form watched the battle unfold. They all knew that Shidima was stronger than anyone present. Hinoke told Kanag that this situation was far beyond anything he could give him, and the mage added that Shidima's precision was terrifyingly high. If more humans had been living in that place, Shidima could have already become a demon king. She warned Kanag that if Shidima took his life as well, it would make him even stronger and wreak havoc on civilization. She even said that the discovery of the Grimorium had been nothing but coincidence. Then Hinak stepped forward, asking Kanag to lend them his body so they could take care of this. But to their complete surprise, Kanag refused outright. He apologized, but firmly said, "This isn't training, this is real." He explained that he had to overcome this obstacle on his own, just as he would have to overcome things in the future. Filled with confidence and determination, he looked at them and asked if they agreed. The mage tried to argue, but Hinak interrupted. He told Kanag, "You've already surpassed us." Hinak placed a hand on Kanag's shoulder, reminding him of his vow to overcome the founders. Then he encouraged Kanag to go, use everything he had learned, and do things his own way. This greatly boosted Kanag's confidence. With a determined expression, he faced the battlefield and asked the founders to watch over him. Without hesitating for even a moment, he ran toward the field where Shidima and Sue were still fighting fiercely. Sui looked battered and exhausted. As soon as he opened his eyes, Shidima attacked again, sending him flying through the air. While Sui was still airborne, Shidima prepared the finishing blow to end him. But just as Sui braced for impact, someone grabbed him mid-air. Kanag had caught both Sue and his sword. Still in the air, he quickly borrowed Sue's sword and with swift movement hurled Sue toward the ground, away from the range of Shidima's magic beam. Sue crashed into the ground hard, and Shidima immediately shifted his attention to Kanag, who remained suspended in the air. Shidima fired another Magatsu's breath directly at him, but was shocked. Kanag was calmly using Hinak's one-handed sword style. With razor-sharp focus, Kanag sliced straight through Shidima's breath attack, cutting it cleanly in half. Then with precise control, he struck Shidima's arm, severing it completely from his body. Shidima was stunned, horrified, and speechless. He had no idea what had just happened. Trembling with rage, he screamed about his identity, but Kanag, fully determined, replied coldly that he was the one who would surpass the founders. The mage watching asked Hinok if Kanag would defeat the Black Magus, but even Hinok didn't know. Still, Hinok was certain that Kannagi is no fool. He suspects that Kanag may have learned something new while he slept in the car on the way here. A wide smile spreads across Hinok's face, making Kannagi wonder if even he understands what is happening. Sue is equally shocked as he watches Kanag move with such efficiency and fluidity. Just moments ago, he had refused Kanag's help, yet now that very same help is saving his life. Meanwhile, Kanag continues to attack Shadima relentlessly, forcing Shadima to teleport backward. Shadima counterattacks with his dark art Roman, sending a rain of energy blasts toward Kanag. Kanag tries to dodge them, but quickly realizes they are tracking him. Kannagi leaps to escape, but the explosions continue to pursue him. Suddenly, he remembers one of the Founder's abilities, Aftershock. He slams his foot into the ground, raising a stone barrier in front of him to block the incoming attacks. Shadima is surprised by Kanag's tactics, but quickly launches more blasts in his direction. Kanag responds by using the shattered stone fragments to protect himself again. Then, seeing his chance, Kanag combines two abilities and moves swiftly behind Shadima. But Shadima manages to dodge in time. He counterattacks immediately, unleashing his yin explosion plate, striking Kannagi. Kannagi is hit, but absorbs most of the impact. Using a stone suspended in the air as a platform, he launches himself toward Shadima, recalling the lessons of the Founders. Shadima dodges again, but the variety of techniques Kanag uses leaves him stunned. Even the Founders watching from afar are shocked by Kanag's rapid growth and his constant assault. But Shadima is not finished. With a dark expression, he activates his forbidden art, summoning a gigantic skeletal monstrosity. By fusing multiple skeletons together, the massive creature towers over everyone, emanating a powerful and malevolent aura. Shadima smiles. "This is the end," he says. The giant skeleton swings its massive hand toward Kanag as the Founders shout for him to run. But Kannagi simply stands still, unmoving, staring at the incoming attack. He is focused. He knows he still lacks the power to defeat Shadima, even if he gave everything he had. He needs something more, something beyond his current limits. Remembering the lessons of the mage and Hinok, Kanag recalls how to handle the brilliant flame and Hinok's one-handed sword technique. He remembers Hinok teaching him the wave blade attack and various cuts. Drawing inspiration from both teachings, Kanag channels the brilliant flame into his hand, while infusing his sword with Hinok's technique, turning his weapon into a blazing blade. The mage and Hinok watch in shock. Kannagi has just achieved the impossible. Holding his newly empowered weapon, Kannagi is ready. The technique he has just executed is called the blazing fire-cutting blade. Without hesitation, he charges at the skeletal beast, swinging his flaming sword, as Shadima watches in disbelief. Remembering Hinok's teachings on the blade and the mage's magical arts, Kanag merges the two. With fierce determination, he uses the blazing fire-cutting blade, enveloping his sword in flames. With one swift motion, he slices the skeleton in half from head to toe, cutting through Shadima as well. Everyone is shocked by this feat, by his ability to combine two magical skills in such a manner. The alchemist founder is particularly impressed, calling Kanag an irregular for his ability to switch and combine all kinds of abilities. He never expected Kanag to fuse techniques so easily, and he suspects there may be even more to his potential. Suddenly, the alchemist vanishes, leaving Hinok confused. The mage, hearing his words, agrees, realizing they may have underestimated Kanag's abilities. She now feels a twinge of concern, wondering if it is wise to create someone like him. Hinak, however, is excited by Kannag's power and eager to see how far he can grow. When Kannagi lands on the ground exhausted, he is shocked to see Shidima, who had been split in two, begin to regenerate from his own blood. Enraged, Shidima growls that if the attack had hit his head, he might have died. Channeling dark energy, he forms a death orb, promising to end things himself. But as he speaks, Su suddenly slashes his throat from behind. Shidima is decapitated, completely caught off guard. As his body collapses, Su grabs Kannagi, who has fallen unconscious. Holding him, Su remembers a distant memory. His older brother once carried him in the same way. It had been a freezing night under a bridge, snow covering the ground. His brother had promised to bring food in the morning. As Tezu drifted to sleep, they heard the sounds of a large parade above the bridge, others celebrating while they trembled in the cold with empty stomachs. This memory reminds Tezu why he chose solitude. Shidima had tried to manipulate him by exploiting that loneliness. But as he looks at Kanag now, he realizes something. He is not truly alone, and even, whatever it is, he can endure it. As he ponders this, the barrier around them begins to crack. Kana and Rana rush in immediately, worried when they see Kanag unconscious. Once they confirm that he has simply fainted, Hanada notices that the barrier is collapsing from within. She warns them that they need to act quickly. Rana asks what will happen if the energy inside the barrier erupts outward. Su grips his sword tightly, revealing that if it does, they will all be crushed to death. Their only option is to strike it with their strongest attack and try to redirect it. Although Su says this confidently, deep inside he is unsure whether they can manage it in their current state, but they have no choice. As they prepare, Kanag, still unconscious, suddenly reaches for his sword, channeling energy into it. Su notices this in shock. Inside Kanag's mind, Hinak takes control, guiding his body. When the barrier explodes, everyone releases their full power, while Hinak executes his cloud-splitting one-handed style. Outside the barrier, a red-haired man rushes toward the scene, accompanied by two others. His subordinates warn him that the barrier is about to collapse. Suddenly, it bursts open. The men fear they may be too late, but to their surprise, a brilliant beam of blue light shoots into the sky from Kanag's sword. The red-haired man watches in awe, recognizing the light as a flawless sword technique performed without hesitation. His name is Suom Makoto, captain of the anti-prophecy unit. Observing the spectacle before him, he wonders who could be responsible for such mastery. Later, aboard a plane flying over Peru, Midori is on a call with Makoto, shocked that the new recruit has just stopped an unknown prophecy. Meanwhile, in Japan, Makoto, still on the phone, faces a first-class prophecy, one he claims is far more powerful than what they encountered before. Instead of boarding the plane, Midori sits atop it, smiling as he reflects on how much the anti-prophecy unit has grown, even if he isn't there to witness it personally. However, his amusement fades when Makoto reveals that the central member who interrupted the prophecy was none other than Kannagi, the same Kannagi who joined the team only 2 days earlier. Stunned, Makoto desperately demands to know who he really is. Without hesitation, Midori confidently declares that Kanag is the one who will end all prophecies. They had been anticipating his arrival for a long time. There had always been a lingering sense of expectation surrounding him, as if he was the one they had been waiting for. Makoto, skeptical of such grand hopes, questions whether their faith in him is truly justified. Instead of arguing, he is simply told to see for himself. Changing the subject, Makoto insists that Midori return. His presence is needed, as facing an opponent of equal strength without him is proving difficult. Midori offers a brief apology before shifting his focus. Meanwhile, Rin approaches, her voice urgent as she speaks of a great prophecy unfolding before them. An enormous enemy, a super-rank prophecy, the leader of the suicidal infection, Stam. As the monstrous being charges toward them, Midori tells Makoto to hold on, assuring him he will finish soon. Without hesitation, he reaches out and unleashes the divine wind turbulence. At that exact moment, in a hospital room, Kannagi's eyes suddenly snap open. A gasp escapes his lips as he sits up abruptly. A nurse, noticing his sudden movement, leans in to reassure him. She informs him that he has finally regained consciousness. He has been in the anti-prophecy infirmary sleeping since the end of his mission. Hearing this, Kanag wonders if he merely lost consciousness. His sleep was so deep he hadn't even entered the spatial realm to train with the founders. The nurse assures him that he is fine, opening the curtain before reminding him to call if he needs anything. As she draws the curtain aside, Kanag notices Sue sitting nearby, arms crossed, silently watching him. Seeing him there, Kanag wonders if Sue had been watching over him the entire time he was unconscious. Kanag looks around and realizes that Hanada and Rana are missing. Curious, he asks about them, and Sue reveals that they are training, frustrated by their perceived uselessness in the last battle. With a tone of acceptance, Sue calmly states that Kanag's power was overwhelming. Hearing such praise from a man like Sue shocks the young powerhouse, but before he can fully process it, Sue suddenly stands up and aggressively demands to know who he really is. In less than 2 days since his arrival, Kanag has already defeated a third-rank boss and a possible first-rank boss, while using a rare fusion spell Sue has never seen before. Pressing the question again, Sue demands to know Kanag's true identity, and how he too can become like him. As Sue continues to press for answers, Makoto suddenly arrives, asking if Kanag is the one he's been Makoto asks if Kanag is the one he has been looking for. Kanag confirms, but Sue is stunned by the unexpected arrival of his older brother. Makoto walks past Sue without even looking at him, while Kannagi hesitantly asks if he truly is Sue's older brother. The moment the question leaves his lips, Makoto suddenly draws his sword and swings it within inches of everyone in the room. Sue and Kanag are caught completely off guard. Dodging the attack, Kanag wonders if this is some kind of test, while Makoto, equally surprised, marvels that a mere trainee managed to avoid his strike. Makoto confirms that it was indeed a test, and Kannagi passed. Without hesitation, he introduces himself as the captain of Suo's squadron, Suo Makoto. The realization hits Kanag hard. Makoto really is Sue's older brother. After a brief pause, Makoto announces that due to Kanag's extraordinary performance against the Rank 1 Calamity, he will be temporarily joining his squad. The announcement shocks Kanag, but Sue is even more stunned. A trace of jealousy stings him. Despite being Makoto's younger brother, he has never been allowed to join his squad. Wasting no time, Makoto orders Kanag to follow him to a briefing. In the background, Sue clenches his fist so tightly in frustration that his knuckles begin to bleed. Meanwhile, in the training area, the duo from the anti-prophecy unit are training intensely. Kana wields several weapons, while Renata focuses on blocking her attacks. No matter how hard they push themselves, they know that reaching Kanag's level is almost impossible. As they continue practicing, Midori suddenly walks in, announcing his arrival with chocolates from Peru. To his shock, they ignore the chocolates completely and rush toward him, eagerly asking how long he will be staying in Japan. When Midori reveals he will stay for a week, the duo immediately insists on training under his guidance during that time. They refuse to let Kanag surpass them without a fight. Surprised, Midori hadn't expected them to be so determined. He agrees to train them, but then asks about Suo, wondering whether he wants to join as well. Right as he finishes speaking, Suo arrives, his expression filled with pure determination as he confirms he will also join. Meanwhile, in the hallway, Kannagi keeps up with Makoto's fast pace as he leads the way. Back in the training room, the group is shocked to see Su so determined to train. Su reveals that Kanag has been summoned by his older brother to temporarily join his squad. This revelation surprises the duo, making them realize just how far Kanag has progressed. Being personally recruited by Makoto is no small feat. However, Su sees this as a sign of his own shortcomings compared to Kanag, believing he must become much stronger. In the hallway, Kannagi, curious, asks Makoto about the meeting. Makoto reveals that it concerns their next mission, which they will depart for the following morning. As they walk, Makoto suddenly stops and asks if Kannagi is close to his younger brother. Remembering their last battle together, when Su lent him a sword, Kanag excitedly confirms that he is. Although Makoto acts indifferent, he secretly cares deeply for his brother, but never shows it. Because of this, Su misunderstands that Makoto hates him and doesn't care. The truth is that during Makoto's previous visit, he didn't ignore Su, he simply couldn't bear to look at his injuries. However, that misunderstanding made Su believe that Makoto was brushing him aside, fueling his determination to risk his life and grow stronger just to earn his brother's attention. One day, he hopes to defeat Makoto himself. Still curious, Kannagi pushes Makoto a bit more, and Makoto finally admits that he truly does care for his little brother. Kannagi finds this touching. Back in the training area, as Su explains everything to the group, Kana is confused. Even though Su talks about surpassing his brother and proving himself, he still respects him deeply. While continuing her training with Hanada, Kana comments that, in the end, Su just wants his brother's attention. Hanada finds this adorable, but Akan's words trigger something in Su, leaving him infuriated. Meanwhile, at the meeting, Kannagi learns about the team's 3 main rules. 1. Be fast. 2. Maintain offensive pressure. 3. Overcome weaknesses. Within the Counterforce division, Makoto's team is considered the strongest in combat capability. The team operates with a minimum of 7 members, designed to function as a small but elite force. Their primary targets are level 1 threats and above. Aboard the helicopter, as Makoto's squad is escorted toward their mission, a squad member named Jakairo casually comments that 90% of the team's power comes from their captain, while the rest are just background characters. Since Kanag is only a temporary member, not much is expected from him. However, while Jakairo is explaining this, Kanag is distracted, busy on his phone. Jakairo points this out, which leads Kanag to apologize, explaining that he needs to contact his friends. Confused, Jakairo asks what he means by contact. Kanag is trying to reach the other members of the anti-prophecy group since the founders keep insisting on it. While the group is training, they receive his message, and upon reading it they are all shocked, especially Su, who wonders what the hell Kanag is thinking by sending it. They immediately show it to Midori, who discovers that the message contains 3 separate pieces of advice, each tailored to a different person. The detailed guidance on how to become stronger impresses Midori. Smiling, he extends his hand and asks whether they will follow the advice or reject it. Seeing it as a challenge, everyone accepts, especially Suo, who is furious because Kanag has essentially rubbed salt in his wounds. Back on the plane, Jakairo informs Kanag that they have reached their destination. Wiping the window, Kannagi is amazed by the sight of a vast snowy mountainous landscape with enormous crystal peaks emerging from the ground. Their mission is to deal with a rank 1 prophecy, Frozen Earth. This disaster threatens to freeze the entire planet as the affected areas are expanding at an alarming rate. If it is not contained, the whole Earth could be consumed, ending all life. This phenomenon is occurring simultaneously in 17 different locations in various countries, many of them in urban areas, which only worsens the crisis. Vice Captain Cash informs the team about the situation, emphasizing that they cannot afford delays, as reports indicate the freezing effect is spreading faster than expected. Leading the mission, Makoto orders the team to jump from the back of the helicopter since it cannot proceed safely any further. Before they jump, he reminds them that no human life must be harmed. To motivate everyone, he orders them to chant the team's 3 rules, and they shout them in unison. At the rear, Kannagi reflects on his last battle, where once again he relied on Hinak in the end. Determined to become stronger during this temporary mission, he sees it as a valuable opportunity to learn from the other members. When everyone jumps from the helicopter, Kanag decides to complete this mission on his own. This is his first rank 1 prophecy. At 10:17 a.m., everyone lands safely on the ground. The air is freezing, and despite being a trained fighter, Jakairo catches a cold, questioning how the temperature is affecting him. Kashi explains that the cold is far worse than the reports indicated, which may be the reason. He also informs the team that the area is vast and suggests setting up a camp midway. Hearing this, Makoto considers something, but keeps it to himself. Meanwhile, Kanag asks Cairo whether the prophecy Frozen Earth is recorded in any prophecy book. Jakairo denies it, revealing that the anti-prophecy unit predicted it using their unique abilities. Although there are many prophecies, this is the first time a member has successfully identified a rank 1 prophecy. That is why Makoto's team was chosen for the mission, given its severity. Kanagi's question is answered, but Kashi notices that he seems a bit nervous. Kashi reassures him, saying that being nervous is better than letting his guard down, but he shouldn't let it become a burden. Jakairo places a hand on Kanag's shoulder, repeating Kashi's words and reminding him that he is moving with the best team in the anti-prophecy unit. Kashi yells at Jakairo for being too relaxed, causing him to apologize immediately. Suddenly, Jakairo raises his hand, reporting that his radar has detected enemies at 2 o'clock, approximately 200 meters away. Kashi acknowledges the report and disappears in an instant, only to reappear moments later. She confirms that she scouted ahead and saw 30 monsters with an estimated rank of SSS+. These creatures belong to the ice gargoyle race of the Tisei tribe. Upon hearing this, Makoto immediately orders his unit to annihilate the enemy. The squad advances toward the approaching monsters in a highly coordinated manner. Their teamwork and situational awareness leave Kannagi impressed. They operate on a completely different level compared to the recruits, making him realize that these are elite warriors, far beyond regular members. Eager to join the fight, Kannagi asks for permission, which Makoto grants, dismissing the enemies as nothing more than SSS rank. With permission granted, Kannagi charges forward and kicks a monster in the head. However, to his shock, the creature explodes, launching shards in all directions. Kiyashi, skillfully dodging the attack of a flashy monster, warns everyone that some extremely powerful monsters are mixed in with the others. Meanwhile, Kannagi activates his slicing blade of fire and completely obliterates a monster with a flaming attack, launching it far away. Witnessing this, Jinro is surprised that someone like Kanag used a fury sword technique. Kashi is impressed, while Makoto, with just a few swings of his sword, effortlessly cuts down the remaining monsters. He also notices Kanag's fire sword and realizes that the blue beam of light he saw earlier must have come from it. With the monsters defeated, the group sets up camp in the mountains and begins to eat. During the meal, Kashi asks Cairo what else he saw on the radar. Cairo reports that there are no boss-level threats within 10 kilometers of his radius. Hearing this, Kashi sighs of relief, confirming that they can safely spend the night there. However, she soon wonders where Kanag and the captain went. Meanwhile, Kanag is sitting by his own campfire, trying to fuse his spells just as he did before. As he concentrates, the captain suddenly approaches from behind and calls out to him, praising his enthusiasm for training. Startled, Kannagi nearly jumps out of his skin when Makoto scares him by approaching so silently. After calming him down, Makoto sits beside him and asks if this is his first time camping and whether he finds it difficult. Kanag enthusiastically says he is fine, but to his surprise, Makoto casually remarks that he just wants to go home and smoke. Kanag is shocked. He never expected someone like the captain to mention smoking. But to Kanag's horror, Makoto then reveals that he is desperate to smoke his cat. Confused and alarmed, Kanag completely misunderstands, thinking the captain is talking about drugs. He immediately questions him about his cat, and Makoto, getting uncomfortably close, takes out his phone and shows him a picture. Kanag asks the cat's name, and Makoto reveals that it is Oribi. As Kanag examines the photo, he notices the cat's fierce expression, but instead asks whether Makoto actually misses him. To his surprise, Makoto denies it, revealing that Oribi is a true menace, always scratching things, vomiting everywhere, and being a general nightmare. Despite all that, Makoto admits the cat is still adorable, just like his younger brother Su. Kanag finds it strange to hear Makoto talk this way, but he listens as the captain, with a hopeful tone, expresses his wish to one day talk with Su the way he is talking with Kanag now. Kanag, being an only child, admits he can't relate, but offers a suggestion. Kanag maybe Makoto should treat Su the same way he treats his cat. Hearing this, Makoto He then shows Kanag some videos on his phone, shocking him with footage of the captain treating his cat like a baby. Amused, Makoto asks if such behavior is really acceptable. Then, with a gentle expression, he looks at Kanag and asks if they can train together. In Kanag's mind, he panics, but before he can respond, Kashi arrives looking for them. She tells them to return to camp, reminding them that they need to depart early the next morning. Makoto agrees without complaint that night. However, Makoto and his team remain unaware of a mysterious figure wandering through the snowy land. Dressed casually as if going to the beach, the person ventures deeper into the frozen terrain. When he stops, he declares that he is on a mission to fulfill the prophecy tied to this place. Holding a small book in his hand, he states that it is an important mission. He is a solo awakener heading toward the same mountain as Makoto and his squad. At the camp, while Kannagi sleeps, he finds himself training in his dreams with the founders. Today's lesson is archery, meant to improve his concentration. He practices with a heavy bow under Margot's guidance. Noticing that Kanag is sweating, Margot asks whether it is painful to maintain such steady focus. As they train, Hinoki loudly complains about why it isn't sword training day, but the mage quickly silences him, reminding him that it was his turn yesterday. Despite the noise, Margot is impressed that Kanag remains unfazed, showing significant improvement in maintaining his concentration compared to their first session. Kannagi explains that he is currently on a mission with an incredible team, which motivates him to give his all. With his focus locked on the target, he releases the arrow, hitting the center with perfect precision. Margot is amazed by his accuracy as Kanag collapses to the ground, sighing of relief. Margot reminds him not to forget the feeling and ends the day's training. Realizing the session is over, Hinoki becomes excited, immediately drawing his sword and ordering Kanag to get up for sword training. But just as they are about to begin, Kanag is suddenly awakened by his team. It is time to continue the journey. Before they depart, Makoto tells everyone that today they will defeat the boss connected to the prophecy. As they moved forward, they encountered more monsters, this time a flock of blue birds. When the team advanced toward them, the founders within Kanag commented that the mission should be easy, given the team's power. However, the mage noticed that one of the oldest founders seemed uneasy, sensing that something was wrong with the fight. After a brief battle, the team successfully eliminated the monsters, clearing the path ahead. Makoto then ordered Jikaru to scout forward. Jikaru reported that approximately 2,000 meters from their position, there was likely a massive boss heading straight toward them. He then delivered the horrifying news that the monster would reach them in just 10 seconds. Moments later, an imposing figure known as the unknown god Calamitous came charging toward them with a ferocious, maniacal expression. Her aura was completely unlike anything they had faced before. Makoto immediately ordered his team to attack, and they charged forward in perfect coordination. Takaro used his abilities to chain the creature, while Kaisha attacked from every angle. However, to their shock, their attacks caused no visible damage. The boss remained completely unharmed despite the well-executed combo. Just as the boss was about to counterattack, it suddenly sensed something approaching from above. It was Kanag, descending with a powerful sword strike. Remembering what Hinoki had taught him about executing a vertical slash, he unleashed his strongest attack first, ready to strike with full force. Combining his power, Kanag attacked with his blazing fire blade, sending a beam of fire toward the boss. To his shock, it had no effect. The boss immediately counterattacked, swinging her own sword and slamming Kanag into the ground. Hearing the powerful impact, Jikaru momentarily believed that Kanag had died. However, Kanag survived after falling onto an ice crystal that cushioned his fall. Meanwhile, Kashi, still fighting, realized why this boss was ranked number 1. She glanced toward Makoto. Now it was up to him to save them. Makoto drew his sword, and the moment he did, Jikaru instantly bound Kanag in chains and lifted him out of the battle, stating that if they interfered, they would only hinder their captain. As they retreated, the boss attacked Makoto with full force. The sheer power of the blow created a massive shockwave, causing Kanag to worry about Makoto's safety. To his astonishment, Makoto stopped the attack just centimeters from his body. The boss attacked again, and once more Makoto blocked it effortlessly. Without hesitation, he counterattacked with a devastating strike, severing one of the boss's arms. Watching this, Hinoki exclaimed that he wanted to do the same. However, Kanag firmly refused to let Hinoki take over his body. Facing the wounded boss, Makoto calmly declared that he had wanted his team to gain experience fighting a boss of this level, but now he would finish it himself. Hearing this, the team quickly erected a protective barrier around themselves. Once the barrier was in place, Makoto channeled his red dragon ability into his sword, releasing raging flames in all directions. He then combined it with crimson light, unleashing a massive inferno directly at the boss, obliterating nearly half of her body. Kanag witnessed this in complete shock. Makoto had used a sword flame technique similar to his own, but it was vastly more powerful. Without the protective barrier, everyone would have been reduced to ashes. Kanag silently apologized to the boss, saying it was his duty to protect the world. Then, out of nowhere, he meowed like a cat, causing an unbearable wave of second-hand embarrassment among everyone present. Observing the battle closely, Kanag realized that Makoto's technique was vastly different from Hinoki's. His abilities were truly on another level. Filled with awe, Kanag now deeply wished to learn from him. Makoto then delivered the final blow, cutting the boss completely in half. However, in an instant, a flash of light crossed the battlefield. Makoto's arm was suddenly severed. In disbelief, he turned around, only to see a massive hole in Dekaro's body. Kanag looked around frantically, horror overwhelming him as he realized what had just happened. One by one, the bodies of his companions were being torn apart, blood spilling across the ground. Seeing Dekaro collapse, Kanag ran to help him, but with his last strength, Dekaru pushed him away. Staggering backward, Kanag stood in disbelief as the comrades he had fought beside moments earlier now fell dead before his eyes. Despite being on the brink of death, Dekaru is filled with regret. His radar failed to detect the approaching attack, leading to this devastating loss. As he falls, he apologizes to his captain and collapses to the ground, hoping that at least his team managed to see where the attack came from. Kashi is safe, but several other members are struck by the same beam, piercing straight through their bodies. Makoto, clutching his severed arm, shouts for his team to take cover in the terrain, identifying it as a skill-based attack. Without hesitation, everyone obeys and runs for their lives. While fleeing, Kashima grabs a fallen companion, urging him to follow. However, the wounded soldier hesitates, worried about the captain, who is critically injured. The attack that severed Makoto's arm cannot be blocked, not even by a barrier, as its properties annihilate everything that touches. Suddenly, another beam heads straight for Makoto, but he narrowly avoids it by leaping into the air. Kashima watches in growing fear as the boss unleashes a relentless barrage of attacks while regenerating simultaneously. Realizing that they must defeat the boss in a single decisive strike, she turns toward Kanag, finding him kneeling on the ground, frozen in shock. Kanag stares at his fallen comrades. His voice is barely a whisper as he begs the founder Valentine, asking if she can revive them. However, with an apologetic expression, Valentine says she cannot bring the dead back to life. Kanag sighs for a moment, then takes a deep breath. He summons all the founders, admitting that although he wanted to handle everything on his own this time, he now realizes he needs their help once again. Without hesitation, Hinoki steps forward and takes control of his body. Meanwhile, Makoto, analyzing the attack, realizes that it completely bypassed Jiru's radar. Since Jiru's radar can only detect threats within 3 kilometers in range, the attack must have originated beyond that distance. This single strike not only killed Dakaru, but also severed Makoto's arm, proof that the hidden enemy is at least as strong as he is. Determined to not let his fallen comrades' sacrifices be in vain, Makoto pushes beyond his current limits, channeling power far greater than his normal capacity. Using his heightened senses, he focuses his energy to locate a point more than 3 kilometers away, despite the obstacles concealing the enemy. Gripping his sword tightly, he remembers those who fell today. Their deaths fuel his resolve. With unwavering determination, Makoto charges his blade with crimson light and unleashes a devastating torrent of fire. The scorching inferno tears across the ground, destroying everything in its path, until it finally reveals the enemy who cast the lethal spell. It is the same boy who arrived alone, dressed in casual clothes. He is impressed that Makoto managed to track him after his attack, as expected of the captain of the strongest squad. However, Makoto is stunned. His attack was completely absorbed by the boy. The boy claims that if Makoto had still had his left arm intact, that attack would have killed him. He is using a spell called Darkness, channeling dark orbs around his body. As he walks toward Makoto, he hurls one of the orbs with lethal intent. In response, Makoto swings his sword, conjuring an ice barrier. He then counterattacks instantly, vanishing and reappearing behind the boy, slashing at his neck. But before Makoto can process what just happened, the same devastating beam strikes again, tearing away part of his torso. The boy remains unharmed, calmly stating that he had anticipated Makoto's attack. He adds that it is Makoto who was truly close to death. Those words ignite Makoto's fury. With the little strength he has left, he charges forward, swinging his sword. The boy easily dodges and counterattacks with a powerful kick, landing directly on Makoto's open wound. However, Makoto is one step ahead. Exploiting the opening, he strikes with the back of his sword, knocking the boy to the ground. As Makoto watches, he grows curious about why the boy stopped using the beam attack after only a few shots. Despite its overwhelming power, it seems he cannot sustain it indefinitely. Makoto realizes that the boy cannot use his spell continuously. In terms of stamina, they are evenly matched. The boy manages to land on his feet, confirming Makoto's suspicion, but he points out that they are not in the same condition. Makoto is clearly at a disadvantage, with an amputated arm and half of his body missing. Even so, Makoto refuses to acknowledge the concept of disadvantage. He recalls the 3 rules of the Makoto squad, drawing strength from them. Determination floods his body as he prepares to fight until his final breath. With unshakable resolve, he channels searing electrical energy, cauterizing his own wounds to stop the bleeding. As he does, he shouts the third rule of the squad across the battlefield: "Overcome your weakness." With those words, he releases the scarlet flame. The boy's eyes narrow. He realizes that Makoto is burning his own life force to amplify his power. In response, he does the same, fueling his darkness spell with his own essence. Makoto, invoking the spirits of his fallen comrades, stares down his opponent. His voice echoes across the battlefield as he warns him not to underestimate his team. Meanwhile, farther back, as Kanag calls upon his founders for help, his hair turns white when Hinok takes control of his body. The remaining team members who are still retreating are suddenly stopped by the boss, who remains strong while regenerating her arms. Witnessing this, Cash becomes worried, realizing she cannot subdue the boss on her own. She calls out to Kanag, who is still kneeling in the distance. To her, it seems that his fighting spirit vanished completely after witnessing the deaths of his teammates. That reaction is natural. He was just an ordinary person who had only recently joined the group. However, to her surprise, Kanag rises from the ground. In the blink of an eye, he rushes forward and delivers a devastating kick to the boss, sending her flying. On the other side of the battlefield, Makoto and his opponent continue their fierce exchange, striking at one another relentlessly. Wielding only half of his sword, Makoto releases the scarlet light. His opponent barely manages to dodge, leaning to the side. Despite avoiding the attack, he grows uneasy. It is becoming harder to keep up. Makoto's flames, which should have been extinguished by the darkness spell, are reigniting and striking him again. Moreover, there is a limit to how much darkness he can manually control, and that limit is rapidly approaching. Realizing this, he unleashes a barrage of dark spheres towards Makoto. Makoto swiftly evades, seizing an opening to charge forward and sever his opponent's arm. Their positions are now reversed. However, despite losing an arm, the opponent lunges forward and drives his knee into Makoto's wounded arm. Makoto collapses to the ground in pain as the opponent slowly approaches. Looking down at him, he declares that losing an arm means nothing. After all, Makoto still has a gaping hole in his stomach. Then he reveals something terrifying. He had anticipated Makoto's strategy from the very beginning. From the first attack, he knew Makoto would choose close-quarters combat. He acknowledges Makoto's strength, admitting that he always makes the best decisions and never wastes time. However, he also points out Makoto's flaw. He is far too predictable. That, he declares, is the reason Makoto will lose. Reaching into his bag, he pulls out a book. Holding it up, he states that Makoto's defeat has already been decided by its contents. Makoto's eyes widen in shock as he recognizes the Book of Perdition. The opponent opens the book, revealing a shocking truth. He claims that if there is an organization that exists to prevent prophecies, that it is only natural that another exists to fulfill them. Makoto is stunned to learn that such an organization exists. The opponent then delivers his final revelation. He is one of the 12 apostles of the apocalypse. He introduces himself as the 12th of darkness, destined to fulfill the prophecy. Makoto, still incredulous, questions the reason for his obsession with destruction. Flipping through the book's pages, the opponent smiles and asks if Makoto would forgive him if he revealed the answer. Makoto is enraged by the mockery. Without hesitation, he swings his sword with all his strength, nearly severing the opponent's shoulder. Makoto is confident that he can still win this battle, as his opponent appears to be running out of mana and his body seems to be reaching its limit. Makoto invokes the red dragon form, convinced that this will secure his victory. On the other hand, the man, despite having his shoulder nearly torn off, remains standing and declares that this is the end for Makoto. With that, he pulls out a potion and drinks it, releasing a dazzling burst of light. The light blinds Makoto, and within that brilliance, a powerful punch slams into Makoto's face, sending him crashing to the ground. When the dust settles, Makoto stares in disbelief. All the damage he inflicted has been completely healed, and his opponent has returned to full strength. The man explains that the potion he used is an artifact capable of fully restoring the body. With only one arm, Makoto uses his scarlet-like blade once more, sending a wave of sword energy towards his opponent. But his opponent disperses it with his dark orbs and counterattacks with a relentless barrage of attacks. Makoto is horrified. The artifact his opponent used should be under national control due to its immense power. No ordinary organization should possess such an item. The man delivers a brutal kick to Makoto's wounded abdominal wound, sending him flying to the ground, where he takes his final breath. Believing he has finally won, the man exhales in relief. Meanwhile, Makoto, recalling his childhood and his fallen comrades, reaches desperately for his sword. He also remembers Kannag's words about treating his brother like his cat, and a faint smile appears on his blood-stained face. With renewed determination, Makoto reaches for his sword, but just as he's about to swing it, a beam of darkness strikes him, severing the hand that was holding the blade completely. With a confident tone, the man bids Makoto his final farewell. Yet, just as he is about to deliver the finishing blow, someone arrives, shattering the crystal behind him. It is Kanag, supported by all the founders, ready to take revenge on the man who made their disciple cry. Makoto senses Kannag's presence and initially grows worried, but soon realizes it is not just Kannag, something else is emanating from him. The opponent also notices the abnormality and the aura radiating from Kannag. The boy standing before him no longer appears to be a vulnerable target, but rather an existence that will fight back fiercely. Growing uneasy, he warns Kannag not to move, threatening to kill Makoto if he does. However, as he speaks, his arm is severed in the blink of an eye. The opponent is left stunned, unable to comprehend how it happened so quickly. Meanwhile, Kannag simply swings his sword from a distance. The force of the strike is so great that it dulls the blade. The founders react in shock, astonished that the blade became blunt after a single swing. The alchemist founder intervenes, transmuting multiple weapons for Kannag to use in the fight. With pure vengeance in his eyes, Kannag orders each founder to unleash hell upon the man. At the same time, the man completely regenerates his arm, shocking Hinok. The mage founder explains this as reversion, an ability she never expected a modern awakener to possess. She speculates that the artifact he used is continuously healing his wounds until its effect runs out. As she speaks, Kanag fires an arrow that strikes the man directly in the head. The man never saw it coming, yet he regenerates the wound instantly. Seeing this, one of the founders asks the mage how they can kill him. She replies that they must kill him repeatedly until he eventually stays dead. The man uses his darkness magic as Kanag knocks another arrow. When Kanag releases it, the darkness attempts to intercept the shot, but the arrow pierces straight through, striking the man in the chest and head. The archer founder mocks him, asking if he truly believed he could stop their arrows. The man regenerates once more and counterattacks with a dark sphere. Using the evasive abilities of one of the founders, Kanag dodges the attack and rushes forward, kicking the man in the face. He then grabs the man's hand and delivers a powerful palm strike to his face. One of the founders realizes that the man cannot use his annihilation beam if his vision is blocked by his own dark orbs, which works to their advantage. Dodging his attacks becomes much easier because of this. Kanag lands a heavy blow to the man's stomach, knocking him to the ground. The founders wonder how many times they will have to watch the same man die and regenerate. Meanwhile, Kanag approaches Makoto. In his weakened state, Makoto asks if he is truly Kanag. Kanag denies it, explaining that the founders are using his body as heroic spirits. Using Valentine's powers of healing and preservation, Kanag begins restoring Makoto's arms. As he works, he explains that they are pressed for time and must act quickly. Watching Kanag leave, Makoto understands that it is the founders who are currently in control. A short distance away, the man rises in shock, unable to believe that his spells are being dodged and countered so easily. Before he has time to think, Kanag attacks with a spear, piercing straight through his heart. The man is assaulted mercilessly, dying over and over again without a moment to recover. One of the founders asks the mage whether keeping the spear lodged in his heart will prevent regeneration. However, the spear passes through his body and he begins to regenerate yet again. As the man starts recovering, Kanag delivers a powerful downward kick, slamming him back into the ground. Kanag wonders which parts of the body regenerate first if the body is completely destroyed. The man begins regenerating from his hand, but when his body is fully restored, he is gasping and exhausted. He is being destroyed repeatedly, yet he refuses to let a mere boy stop him. Deciding to kill Makoto and escape, he charges forward, only to find Kanag already seated there, guarding Makoto. With a maniacal smile, Kanag tells him that he is too late. Hinok then takes control of Kanag's body and, using his sword style, completely dismembers the man. Although the man is obliterated, he does not fear death, believing he is fulfilling a prophecy. However, his resolve begins to waver in the face of something as terrifying as Kanag. As the man regenerates yet again, he struggles to remember his mission to fulfill the prophecy, refusing to let fear overcome him. He reaches into his bag for another artifact, but before he can use it, Kanag severs his arm. The artifact scatters across the ground, creating a powerful golden cage around Kanag, known as the Sands of Time Cage. The regeneration effect on the man ends, and he is unable to restore his severed arm. Relieved, the man believes he has barely managed to escape. The founders, upon seeing the cage, grow concerned and begin discussing what to do next, as the man's regeneration is nearly exhausted. The man outside the cage declares that not even his darkness can destroy it. As a result, Kanag cannot kill him while he is trapped inside. With a nervous expression, the man announces that he will leave. However, before he can finish his sentence, Hinok shouts for him to pay attention. Suddenly, the man senses a powerful aura behind him and turns around to see Makoto standing there, still regenerating. How could Makoto be this confident and powerful? The answer lies in his childhood, when he trained under the greatest awakener, Midori. Even Midori once lost to Makoto in a sword duel, which led him to suggest that Makoto seek an even better master to continue his training. Following the advice of the strongest awakener in the world, Makoto searched for masters worthy of becoming his teachers. However, he surpassed every master he encountered, whether they taught swordsmanship, magic, or agility. All of them gave up on him in less than a month. One of those masters eventually recommended him to the strongest swordsman they knew at the time, Hinoki Itsuka, the younger sister of Hinoki. Itsuka became Makoto's final master, and he trained with her for nearly 3 years. One day, while training together, Makoto asked Itsuka about a sword technique mentioned in a book called Indomitable. Even Itsuka could not fully understand how the technique worked, stating that it was a skill only Hinok, the founder, could use. Makoto found this fascinating, as he had read about it in the book himself. Eventually, Itsuka realized that she had nothing left to teach Makoto, as he had already mastered Hinok's one-handed sword style. Makoto still wished to grow stronger, but Itsuka did not know how he could progress further. She compared him to a bud that had yet to bloom, saying that even with all his training, it would be difficult for him to fully bloom in this lifetime. She hoped that one day, a swordsman even stronger than him would appear before him. In the present, Makoto realizes that this very moment is unfolding before his eyes. He notices Kanag using sword techniques he never even knew existed. According to Itsuka, such an opportunity comes only once in a lifetime and must not be wasted. Grateful for this chance, Makoto thanks Itsuka and his heart and brings his severed arms together. Seeing this, all the founders are confused about what he's trying to do. Kanag is also worried about his captain, who is outside the cage with the enemy. Makoto begins to emit the same aura as Kanag. Meanwhile, back at the anti-prophecy faction's training grounds, Midori, who is training with Sue, senses an overwhelming aura. Suddenly, an explosion shakes the area. As the dust settles, they are shocked to see a massive hole in the wall, and Midori is gone. Back on the battlefield, the man is confused. Witnessing Makoto perform such a feat despite his condition, he becomes certain of his own defeat. Observing this, Hinoki explains to Kanag that people are like flowers, blooming into their true potential when they reach their peak, whether physically, spiritually, or by mastering a supreme technique. For Makoto, this is the moment of his true potential. Standing behind Kanag, Hinok advises him to engrave everything he is seeing deeply into his memory. Kanag understands what Hinok is trying to convey. Like a flower in full bloom, Makoto raises his arms as if holding a sword, and with unshakable resolve, successfully uses the long-lost technique of Hinok's one-handed sword style, Indomitable, the very technique he once read about in the book. Even though the man's darkness defenses are perfectly activated, his body is cleaved in half, without Makoto wielding a physical sword at all. The man wonders if this is the place and moment where he will meet his end. As his body disintegrates, Hinok praises Makoto for materializing a sword that had existed only in his mind. Meanwhile, Makoto, though confused, feels that he has finally become the swordsman he always aspired to be. He considers it a blessing to have spent time with his family, friends, comrades, and subordinates. Every experience he had made him stronger. Even if this is the end for him, he remembers his little brother and his cat, apologizing to them in his heart. As he is about to lose consciousness, he sees Kanag walking toward him, reaching out his hand with a smile. Seeing this, Makoto realizes that death may not be the end, as he can leave his legacy to the next generation through Kanag. Grasping Kanag's hand, he gives thanks and collapses to the ground. When the cage disappears after the man's defeat, Kanag rushes toward his captain, feeling a deep connection through the emblem of nothingness. All their other comrades lie dead on the ground. But just as Makoto is about to join them, Midori comes flying in, catching him just in time as he falls. Makoto dies in Midori's arms at the age of 23, following the battle with the user of darkness. Press F to pay respects. Holding Makoto's body, Midori is overcome with despair, unable to believe what has happened. He recalls a moment when, during training, he once asked Makoto why he chose to become the captain of the squad. According to Midori, within the anti-prophecy unit, Makoto was the second strongest after him, and if Makoto were to use his full potential, no one would be able to rival him. Midori once asked Makoto whether, with all that strength, he believed it would be better to fight alone. The question surprised Makoto, and he asked Midori if he thought he was unsuited for teamwork. However, to Makoto, his team mattered more than anything else. He was unsure how to put those feelings into words, but suddenly his comrades called out to him through the security camera system. The group was lively and excited because one of their teammates, Kazushiro, had just passed the level 2 task he had been working on. Kazushiro himself was overjoyed, saying that Makoto was the first person he wanted to tell. Dikaru, thrilled by the news, suggested that everyone go out to lunch together. Watching their camaraderie, Midori was taken aback. As he listened, Makoto explained that he truly cared for his comrades, and that even if he were to fall wounded in battle, he would be happy knowing his team was fighting beside him. Returning to the present, Midori holds his friend's body and tells him that his wish to fight for his comrades has been fulfilled. Although most of them have fallen, 2 are still alive. Midori, with tears in his eyes, gently closes Makoto's eyes, stating that as a leader, Makoto fulfilled his duty. It was something Midori knows he himself could not have done, yet Makoto did it, and did so with honor. Meanwhile, Kanag lies on the ground with all the founders standing behind him. Darkness begins to cloud his consciousness, and the mage explains that this is likely because Kanag has taken all the blame for the destruction of the station, and for his perceived weakness. All the founders have also experienced the loss of comrades, friends, and family. Their hearts were shattered as they watched those dear to them fall. In most cases, like Hinoke, they were never able to overcome those wounded hearts. Hinoke approaches Kanag, who is kneeling in despair. He calls out to him, but in a broken voice, Kanag admits that he no longer wants to fight. His heart is in pieces, and he believes that if he had allowed the founders to fight from the beginning, no one would have died. Now he understands that in his attempt to grow strong for others, he became nothing more than a vessel for the founders. Hinaki, hearing Kanag's words, tries to speak, but Kanag is overwhelmed by his thoughts. He feels the hand with which he once grasped Makoto's burning within his consciousness like fire. Kanag knows that Makoto entrusted him with the task of carrying on his legacy. Tears well in the founder's eyes. Then Kanag says something that shocks all of them. He declares that he now wishes not only to surpass the founders, but to surpass them at every single moment he lives. Suddenly, a brilliant beam of light descends on Kanag as he declares his resolve. From that moment on, he vows never to let anyone die again. His mind is now as strong as 1,000 levels combined. 1 month later, in Nagano province on Mount Make, Su is practicing hand-to-hand combat with Kanag. He launches blow after blow toward Kanag, all of which are effortlessly evaded. Kanag then counterattacks with a piercing strike that Su blocks, but the impact creates a shockwave behind him. Kanag is stunned by how easily Su redirected the force of his penetration spell. As Kanag processes this, Su counterattacks, but Kanag is prepared and uses Ikido to spin Su around. Su attempts an aerial kick, but Kanag blocks it and responds with a powerful kick of his own. Just as he is about to land the blow, a loud shout interrupts them. It is Itika. How did all of this come to be? The destruction of the squad left a deep scar on the anti-prophecy unit. During the funeral for the fallen, everyone was mourning, but Su stood frozen before his brother's photograph the entire time. Later, when Kanag was heading to his room, he saw Su leaving Makoto's room carrying several books and a cat. Kanag recognized the cat as Oribe, which Makoto often talked about. Su was shocked that Kanag knew about his brother's cat, something even he himself had not known. Before entering his brother's room, Sue was unaware of the cute cat, the books, the clothes, the food, even the thoughts Makoto carried. He only discovered these things while going through Makoto's belongings. Kanag noticed that Sue was carrying a stack of journals he intended to take with him. These journals had been left by Makoto so that his brother could read them if he ever lost his life. Every day of Makoto's training and every mission was recorded within them. However, Sue noticed something else. Every entry ended with Makoto worrying about Sue. He wrote about how Sue was doing, how cold the weather was, and even about Sue's achievements and life events. Reading the journals alone in his room, Sue collapsed into tears, curling up on the floor as he realized that everything his brother had written was about him. Leave a crying emoji if you are crying too. When Sue shared all of this with Kanag, Kanag revealed that Makoto often talked to him about Sue and his cat, Oribe. Hearing this, Sue broke down, declaring that from now on he wants to grow stronger so that his brother will never have to worry about him from the heavens above. With that, both of them went to train with Rinok and Itika. At first, she was cautious around them, until they revealed that Sao was Makoto's brother, and that Makoto had fallen in battle. This shocked Itika, but she maintained her composure. In unison, both Sao and Kan asked her to train them so they could become stronger. Returning to the present, Itika is impressed by how much both of them have improved, especially Sao, who has progressed remarkably. Kan asks about his own progress, to which Itika responds with an irritated sigh, claiming that she has nothing left to teach Kan since he already knows everything. She jokes that she should be the one asking him to teach her instead. Then she kicks a branch toward both of them, and with a manic smile, declares that she is the sword, challenging them to come at her. With that, both advance toward her, Sao attacking from the front, while Kan attacks from above. As they fight, Kan is determined to grow stronger and confident that he will become the strongest awakened in the world. Meanwhile, in England, London, a man wearing a hat and coat walks alone through the nighttime streets. As he turns a corner, someone recognizes him as one of the 12 apostles of the apocalypse, Quatre. Quatre also recognizes the person approaching him. It is Midori. Midori immediately demands that Quatre reveal the location of his base and comrades, warning that if he says anything else, he will die. Hearing this, Quatre instantly summons his weapon, a strange heart-shaped spear, and challenges Midori to face him. Suddenly, an explosion of blood splashes out of the alley, followed by Midori, who emerges unharmed. Outside, other members of the anti-prophecy group are waiting. Midori hands them the book, turns around, and walks away, saying that 7 remain. They now have 5 books, which means they have killed 5 of the 12 apostles of the apocalypse, and Midori is heading toward the next target. Inside the Hunt for the Eternal Secrets, the ultra-secret anti-prophecy facility, a book collected by Midori is presented to an elderly woman. She is introduced as I, the superintendent of the anti-prophecy unit. The man who delivers the book confirms that it truly came from Midori, revealing that these are the prophecy books of the 12 apostles of the apocalypse. This man is Genin, the superintendent's assistant. Another assistant, an elderly woman named Chike, is also present. She suggests that the books may be part of a single larger book that was dismantled, and opens the book, commenting that eliminating the apostles and recovering the books are not the main problems. The real problem is that Midori is acting on his own, and it seems that Makoto's death left a deep mark on him. Hearing this, Chike wonders what they should do, and I, with a smile, orders them to leave Midori to her, assuring her that when he returns, she will prepare tea for him. Genin then proposes that since Makoto's team was eliminated, leaving a gap in the anti-prophecy unit, they are willing to form a new team under his leadership. Upon hearing this, Ai sinks into thought. Meanwhile, somewhere around Tokyo, a Grade 2 prophecy, the Rebellion, is unfolding. The leader of this prophecy is the God of Down. Members of the anti-prophecy unit are fighting against the prophecy's troops, but they are struggling to defeat even a few of them. Nervous, they call for their captain, Ribik Setsuna. Hibik, the captain of squad Ribik Setsuna, steps forward. To her, the troops are boring and easy to defeat. Then she looks at Khan, who has joined her squad, and asks if she can handle it. Khan uses her spell, Trismistos, creating a massive mass of mercury. She warns everyone to step back as she flows the mercury across the ground toward the troops. Once each soldier's feet are submerged in the mercury, Khan uses her gasification spell, converting the mercury into gas. The troops begin to convulse and suffocate. Khan then converts the gas back into liquid mercury, now inside the troops' bodies. She uses crimson heat to boil the mercury within them, and finally solidifies it, instantly killing all the troops by forming spikes inside their bodies. The entire squad is shocked, as Khan has just eliminated all the troops in a matter of seconds. Khan snaps her fingers and turns to the group, announcing that she is finished. Ribik approaches her, clapping, and praises Khan for using all 3 states of matter and executing 4 attacks in a single ability, which is impressive. She lifts Khan's chin and comments that it is a shame she is only a temporary member of their group. Ribik proposes that once Khan completes her training, she should permanently join their squad. Khan, clearly excited, replies that she will think about it. The other squad members are also impressed by Khan, wondering if she would really join them, considering how cute and strong she is. However, to everyone's surprise, Ribik wants Khan to join because she wants her battles to become even easier. As soon as Khan leaves, she calls Kannagi and informs him that she has completed Lesson 7 on controlling the 3 states of alchemy and asks him to send her the next lesson. Kannagi, who is trying to keep his lunch safe from the cat, readily agrees. Upon hearing this, the founding alchemist is amazed that Kani has finally mastered level 7. Kannagi asks the founder to prepare 3 more lessons for Kani, and he agrees with great satisfaction. Kannagi informs Kani, and she thanks him. She also mentions that Hinata has reached level 8. At Saitama City Hall in the city of Tokorosa, a rank 2 prophecy appears, a land-devouring beast with a sphinx as its leader. Hinata, sent to eliminate the boss, uses his lightning kick and completely destroys the leader with a single strike. With this, he completes his level 8 lesson on the lightning kick. The captain of squad Todoroki praises Hinata and proposes that he join their squad. Hinata, like Khan, wants time to think about which squad he should join. He asks Khan for advice, and she, excited to compete with him, declares that no matter which squad he chooses, she will defeat them. Kannagi, who is on a joint call with both of them, is happy that they are growing stronger and declares that he should get up and begin training. While Kannagi is speaking, Sao becomes irritated because Oribe, the cat, always clings to Kannagi and not to him. He grumbles about it. As he tries to pull the cat away from Kannagi, Kani asks if they have heard the rumor about the formation of a new squad. Kannagi has not heard it, so she explains that a new squad is being formed to fill the gap left by Makoto's squad. The captain of this new squad will be selected from the member with the greatest achievements. Kannagi takes the news lightly, but Kani has something else on her mind. She reveals that the real question is not who becomes captain, but whether Kannagi wants to form his own squad. At first, Kannagi dismisses it as a joke, but then he freezes, realizing the weight of what she is saying. Kannagi asks Kani why she said that. She reveals that there is a certain desire within the anti-prophecy organization, as there is a force in the world capable of eliminating all prophecies. Kannagi is surprised by this revelation, and Kani adds that she also desires such a force. She explains that everyone in the squads is looking for a leader with a strong will, and she believes that Kannagi has the qualities to become a capable squad captain. At that exact moment, the captain of Akma's squad calls her, causing her to apologize to Kannagi and say goodbye. The conversation leaves Kannagi deeply thoughtful about the possibility of becoming a squad captain. Meanwhile, Itika asks Sao about Kannagi, and he reveals the discussion about the possibility of Kannagi becoming a captain. Itika also believes that if Kannagi wants to, he could easily take on the role, and Sao agrees with her. Lost in thought, Kannagi seeks answers from the founders, who seem uncertain about what advice to give him. Since they had all dedicated their lives to following a master, they lack experience in leadership. Founder Mago, realizing this, calls them useless teachers for being unable to guide Kanag in this situation. Hinok then turns to the founder of military strategy, Ron, and asks for his opinion. Ron, however, refuses to intervene, stating that it is not the right time, as there is already someone qualified to guide Kanag. Before Kanag can process this, his thoughts are abruptly interrupted by a wooden spear that strikes the ground just inches from him. Looking up, he sees Itika approaching, urging him not to waste time overthinking, but to continue his training. With a manic smile, she challenges him to use his lightning step against her. Kanag agrees, leaping from the rock and using lightning step in combination with wave step to land smoothly. Itika watches in astonishment, questioning Kanag's true identity. To her, the level of skill he has achieved in just 6 months is impossible for a normal awakened. Remembering Hinok's grueling training sessions, during which he failed countless times while learning lightning step, Kanag lets out a laugh. However, before he can dwell on the memory, he senses an aura of energy surging toward him. Realizing that Itika is charging at him with her wooden staff infused with energy, he dodges quickly. The staff strikes the rock behind him, splitting it cleanly and perfectly in half. Sao, witnessing this, is stunned. Itika, undeterred, reminds Kanaga that she does not care whether he is focused or not, and that she will force him to stay alert. Kanag, now slightly nervous but fully attentive, maintains his stance. Within him, Hinok realizes that Ron was referring to Itika as the person qualified to guide Kanag. The founding mage also comes to understand that Itika is remarkably strong for a modern awakened, as expected of Hinok's descendant. However, Hinok denies having children, claiming that she could be his sibling instead. He acknowledges Itika's strength, noting that since she trained someone as powerful as Makoto, she may be a living successor. However, as he says this, he notices her using a technique called Skyfall, something he has never seen before. This technique releases an electric shock toward Kanag, which he barely manages to evade. Realizing the raw power behind the attack, Kanag understands that Itika is using everything she has against him. Itika presses forward and continues with her purgatory sword technique, delivering a powerful strike against him. Meanwhile, Hinok watches with great enthusiasm, realizing that Itika has developed a new technique by refining all the knowledge that was passed down to her. On the outside, as Kanag dodges the attack, Itika is impressed. It is a technique he had never encountered before, yet he still managed to avoid it. She praises Kanag's one-handed sword style, noting that it closely resembles the techniques of the founder. This comment shocks Kanag, and before he can respond, Itika adds that he may be worrying about whether he could ever become as strong as Makoto. Kanag is stunned, as this was exactly what had been weighing on his mind. Sao, hearing this, is also surprised. Kanag's grip on his sword tightens as he remembers witnessing Makoto's strength firsthand. Makoto was an extraordinary squad captain, and that is precisely why Kanag continues to question whether he can ever reach Makoto's level. To his surprise, Itika suddenly shouts at him to focus, channeling her energy as she unleashes her sword technique, Tengu Dance, creating a powerful water tornado. She explains that this technique was developed by masters of the past who built on the founder's techniques. Although these techniques may never equal the founder's power due to the immense difference in strength, the masters never stopped trying, gradually drawing closer over time. Hearing this, Kanag finally understands what she means. Itika then reveals that she does not know exactly how great Captain Makoto truly was, but from what she knew of him, he must have been an incredible leader. She adds that it will not be the same for Kanag at first, but if he has the ability, he certainly has the potential to reach that level. Pointing her wooden staff at him, she advises Kanag not to obsess over Makoto, but instead to focus on the path entrusted to him. Hearing this, Kanag remembers the moment when Makoto held his hand. Thinking back to that moment, he realizes that he must look toward the future instead of clinging to comparisons. A smile appears on Itika's face as she declares that for the sake of that future, she herself will train him. With that, the two engaged in intense training, pushing each other to their limits. 2 weeks later, at Anti-Prophecy headquarters, Ribik and Todorok, two squad captains, review the list of newly recommended squad candidates. The list submitted by the superintendent himself includes Kanag and Itika. Some members find this selection strange. Meanwhile, outside the headquarters building, a shadowy figure speaks on the phone, informing someone that they have successfully infiltrated the facility and the examination for the new squad captain will take place in 3 days. This figure carries the Book of Perdition and boldly declares that she will soon become the new squad leader of the Anti-Prophecy organization. This figure is none other than Ava, one of the 12 apostles of the Apocalypse. Ava has the ability called Celestial Demon, which allows her to replace the existence of anyone she kills. Her goal is to become the captain of the newly formed Anti-Prophecy Squad and destroy the organization from the inside. As Midori continues his wave of assassinations against the 12 apostles, more than half of them have already fallen. Unable to defeat Midori directly, the remaining apostles decide to sabotage the Anti-Prophecy organization from the inside. Their creed is that they will do anything to fulfill the prophecy. 3 days later, at the Anti-Prophecy's grand training field, the selection exam for the new squad captain begins. As all the participants gather, the instructor announces that there will be 4 tests, with only 4 people advancing to the final stage. The exam follows a points-based system. First place in each test earns 3 points, second place earns 2 points, and third place earns 1 point. In the end, the candidate with the highest total score will be chosen as the captain of the newly formed squad. The superintendent watches as the instructor urges all participants to give their best. In unison, they shout, "Yes." Among them, Kanag feels the weight of everyone's gaze. There are 8 candidates: Koke from Squad Yagarama, Akina from Squad Urasoya, Sonobi from Squad Yashima, Risag from Squad Kakabi, Sakazak from Squad Tarazak, Shikami from Squad Todorok, and Diru from Squad Hibiki. However, the true danger lies in the fact that one of them is actually Ava, one of the 12 apostles of the Apocalypse, an impostor hiding in plain sight. And then there is the special recommendation, Kanag. Unlike the others, Kanag stands alone, as his squad captain Itika is nowhere to be found, oversleeping as usual. Still, she sends him a message warning him that if he does not win, she will personally make him regret it. Determined to avoid elimination before Itika arrives, Kanag steels himself and prepares for the competition. Meanwhile, Itika races toward the training field while riding on Suo's back. She shouts for him to go faster, knowing that if they don't hurry, they might miss crucial moments. She has complete faith that Kanag will win and refuses to miss his victory. Back at the training field, the first test begins, mana measurement. To everyone's shock, Kanag releases an immense amount of energy, shattering the measuring device and securing first place. Arena from Squad Yorosoya, who placed 5th in the test, is stunned by Kanag's overwhelming power. Sakazak takes 3rd place, while Shinobu secures 2nd. Both of them realize that Kanag is an anomaly. Sakazak comments that such irregularities occasionally occur when a genius appears during the examination, whether in physical strength or mana. He speculates that Kanag is a mana prodigy, much like another participant, Shikami, who placed 7th. On the scoreboard, Kanag takes the lead with 3 points. As the instructor announces the second test, hand-to-hand combat, the real battle begins. Each participant must face an opponent, and a victory will earn 2 points. As soon as the instructor announces the first match, Shikami raises his hand voluntarily, requesting to face Kanag. Shikami is the strongest regular member in hand-to-hand combat, and is also considered an irregular. When Shikami was only 2 years old, he was caught in a monster outbreak from another dimension. Despite being a baby in a stroller, he single-handedly killed all the monsters, shocking even his own mother. He protected her and became a legend. In the stands, Ribik accuses Todorok of cheating by sending Shikami into the hand-to-hand combat test. Todorok argues that there is nothing wrong with choosing his strongest member, since Shikami is blessed with magical talent and immense physical strength. He boasts that he has trained Shikami since the day he joined his squad, and that, to this day, no one has ever defeated him in close combat. Hearing this, Ribik wonders if the match will end instantly, given that Shikami's combat abilities are practically unbeatable. As soon as the fight begins, Shikami approaches Kanag and asks if he really has been teaching Renata. Remembering the founders, Kanag replies that he is merely a messenger. Shikami does not understand what he means, but continues, claiming that someone out there is advising and teaching Renata, who is already a super genius. He adds that even without Kanag's guidance, Renata will surpass her current level on her own. Rather than argue, Kanag simply agrees, which only irritates Shikami further. Enraged, Shikami activates Violent Bite, transforming into a monstrous form. In an instant, moving at blinding speed, he lunges at Kanag. Kanag ducks just in time, but Shikami follows up with a powerful claw attack. Watching this, Todoroki is thrilled to see his fighter giving it his all. As Shikami swings with full force, Kanag evades the attack. Seizing the moment, Kanag assumes the kudo stance, grabs Shikami's wrist, and hurls him into the ground with tremendous force. The impact erupts into a massive shockwave, sending rocks flying across the field and frightening everyone. As the debris settles, both Kanag and Shikami are airborne. The other participants are in awe. Although Kanag merely redirected Shikami's attack, his raw strength alone was enough to devastate the entire battlefield. Even Kanag himself is impressed by Shikami's strength, though Shikami assumes he is being sarcastic. Despite the devastating blow, Shikami lands safely on the ground, shocking everyone by managing to do so despite the destroyed terrain. Kirina, analyzing the situation on her laptop, comments that this outcome was inevitable. Shikami's physical enhancement is irregular, and the durability of his body far surpasses that of a normal awakened. Regaining his composure, Shikami charges at Kanag once more. Kanag realizes that simply countering Shikami's blows will not be enough to win. He needs to try something different. Activating his founder's power, he delivers a light kick to the charging Shikami. Then he multiplies the attack using the penetration technique, Luminance Kick, striking Shikami multiple times while he is still airborne. Everyone watches in shock as Shikami crashes to the ground, defeated. The instructor quickly intervenes, stopping the match before it can escalate further, and declares Kanag the winner, awarding him 2 additional points. The other squad members are astonished. This man has just physically overpowered Shikami, despite earlier claims by Akihina that Shikami was an irregular. Akirina, now typing furiously on his laptop, had not expected Kanag to be so exceptional in hand-to-hand combat. He had initially assumed that Kanag would be naturally eliminated if left alone, but it is now clear that Kanag is becoming an obstacle to his plans. As Shikami regains consciousness and opens his eyes, he is shocked to see Kanag casting some kind of spell on him while he lies on the ground. Kanag reassures him, saying that he is healing his injuries, which only surprises Shikami even more. An irregular in both mana and physical prowess, now capable of healing, it seems almost unbelievable. Shikami, still processing what is happening, asks Kanag if there is anything he cannot do. This question makes Kanag recall the time that he desperately tried to bring back the fallen members of Makoto's squad, but failed. After healing Shikami for a while, Kanag tells him that he should be able to stand now. As they talk, a loud crash suddenly echoes nearby. Kanag looks over and realizes that it marks the final match of the hand-to-hand combat exam. Shikami, now alarmed, wonders how long he has been unconscious. Realizing it must have been quite some time, Kanag casually tells him it was only 5 minutes. According to Kanag, after their fight, the other battles began simultaneously. 2 of the matchups ended instantly, but Kirina and Risag are still fighting even after 5 minutes. Both remain determined, exchanging a relentless barrage of full-strength blows. As Risag charges at Kirina, she knocks him back with a powerful strike, mocking him for lacking special abilities. She taunts him, saying that without unique skills or traits, he is unfit to be a captain. Kirina steadies himself and responds to her remark, stating that he is not the type who seeks to stand out. According to him, even if an ordinary person were to take the role of captain, death would be the only outcome. He believes that a captain must have the ability to adapt to any situation in order to increase the survival chances of every squad member, even if only 1%. Kirina declares that this is his goal, ensuring that his squad will not suffer the same fate as Makoto's squad. This statement strikes Kanag deeply, as it refers to his fallen comrades in such a way. Shikami is also offended and warns Kirina to choose his words carefully. Returning to the fight, Risag executes her disciplined chainsword technique, generating a vortex of energy as she charges directly at Kirina. Although Kurina blocks the attack, the sheer force sends Kurina crashing to the ground. Risog quickly follows up with another strike, but just as she is about to land it, Kurina unexpectedly surrenders. The instructor immediately stops the match and declares Risog the winner, leaving her in shock. Another squad member quickly restrains her as she seethes with anger, furious that Kurina gave up so easily instead of putting up a real fight. Kurina, on the other hand, states that he expected the battle to last longer, so he chose to conserve his energy for the upcoming tests. As he walks away, he knows that he could have defeated Risog if he had tried, but he doesn't want to reveal his full strength yet, especially with Kanag nearby. The second stage of the hand-to-hand combat exam ends with Kanag leading the scoreboard with 5 points, followed by Tsunobu with 3. The instructor announces a 30-minute break before the start of the third evaluation. He also reveals that in the next round, the 4 participants with the lowest scores will be eliminated. As the lunch break begins, Kanag wonders about Itika and Suo, who should have been there by now but are still missing. Meanwhile, outside the anti-prophecy headquarters building, Suo finally arrives carrying Itika. Exhausted from the effort, he's confused when she heads towards the courtyard instead of the training field. When he questions her, Itika reveals that she can smell lingering traces of an aura, one that suggests someone died there recently. According to her, it seems to be the residue of an awakened who was killed by an overwhelmingly powerful monster. Hearing this, Sue is shocked. If an awakened was truly killed here, it means that someone may have infiltrated the anti-prophecy headquarters, despite it being such a secret location. Ichika argues that the 12 apostles are strong enough to discover how to find this place, which shocks Sue even more deeply. When he asks about the possible motive, she ignores the question and instead suggests that they head to the training grounds. In her mind, however, she knows that the one who died was likely at the level of a squad captain, a figure of great importance. But with no official reports of such an incident, the situation becomes even more intriguing. Now, not only Midori, but also Itika, Sue, and most notably Kanag are all moving toward the same goal, avenging the death of Captain Makoto. During the lunch break, as everyone tends to their wounds, eats their meals, and chats casually, Kurina sits alone, focused on his laptop. Meanwhile, Kanag, who is seated with Shikami, brightens when he notices the arrival of his comrades, Ikika and Sue. The atmosphere shifts as others grow nervous upon recognizing Itika, one of the 5 elite members of the Anti-Prophecy Special Task Force, alongside Midori. Watching the captains gathered together, many of them feel deeply uneasy. Itika had stated that a captain had been killed, yet all 7 captains were present at the training field. Hearing this, Itika smiles and calls Kanag over to share something important. She tells him everything, shocking him with the revelation that one of the captains may, in fact, be a disguised member of the 12 apostles. According to Itika, the probability is high, based on the aura residue she sensed in the courtyard. The individual who died was undoubtedly at the level of a captain. However, since all the captains are present, the situation becomes extremely suspicious. Logically, this should be impossible, but if someone has taken the victim's place, then there is an imposter among them. Realizing the potential danger, Kanag grows tense, and Sue fully agrees. The person who has just killed a captain-level individual is among them. Sue fears that if they do not resolve this problem soon, there may be more victims. If they leave things as they are, there is a possibility that a prophecy could be fulfilled, leading to human extinction, something truly horrific. Itika, wearing a sinister smile, suggests a far more ruthless approach, killing everyone present to eliminate the threat completely. Sue and Kanag immediately oppose the idea, arguing that they only need to find and eliminate the single member of the 12 apostles lurking among them. Itika, now excited, points out that if they are dealing with the 12 apostles, this may be their chance to avenge Makoto. After all, they are unquestionably the true ones responsible for his death. She asks Kanag if he feels the same way. As Kanag recalls what happened to Makoto and his squad, he confirms that he does. Sue, clenching his fists tightly, also remembers everything that happened to his brother. Kanag then turns to Azur, the founders of the detectives, to ask for his opinion. Azur suggests that they should first examine the crime scene, but given that they are in the middle of an exam, he knows this is not truly possible. Kanag considers rushing there, since there is still some time left before the lunch break ends. However, Ezer warns that doing so could alert the culprit. If the apostle they are dealing with is as strong as the one they faced on the snowy mountain, that individual could easily annihilate everyone here if they wished. They need to be prepared in case that happens. Taking this into account, Kanag decides to go to the training grounds after today's test, but asks whether it is possible that not even the founders could detect any aura residue at the crime scene. Hinoke then reveals that they had been near a volcano in the past month, where he trained and mastered his one-handed sword technique. Ellen explains that the volcano may be interfering with the flow of his chi, potentially making it difficult to detect any residual energy. M also reveals that if the aura can only be sensed at close range, it is almost certainly an enemy from the class of the 12 Apostles. Azur, irritated that they are taking over his detective work, is about to protest vehemently, but Hinoki interrupts him, suggesting that they focus on catching the culprit so he can kill him. Returning to the interrogation, Azur tells Kannagi to ask a critical question. Kannagi then asks whether there is a possibility that the apostle infiltrated as a candidate rather than as a captain. This catches Aika by surprise, but after a moment she confirms that it is possible, if they are referring to captain candidates. However, she insists that they cannot rule out suspicion of the squad captains either. Kannagi understands, but quickly forms an idea that he plans to use in the next test, assuming it involves combat abilities. However, only a few minutes later, the instructor announces the start of the third stage of the exam, revealing that it is a written test, completely shocking Kannagi. The candidates are seated in private chambers, where phones are not allowed, making it impossible for Kannagi to gather any information about the infiltrator. The test focuses on the rules of anti-prophecy, a subject Kannagi understands absolutely nothing about. Even so, he refuses to give up, determined to push forward. When the test ends, the instructor announces the results. Kannagi scores 0 points, while Akirina jumps to second place with 3 points. The last 4 candidates, including Shikami, are eliminated. Kannagi feels embarrassed for having the lowest score on the written exam, but while he stands there frustrated, Shikami approaches and encourages him, telling him that he did very well. Both Kannagi and Shikami received 0 points on the written test, but Shikami is especially frustrated with Kirina for achieving a perfect score. Despite this, he praises Kannagi for maintaining first place and assures him that he will be cheering for him in the second half of the exam. He wonders who will be selected as the new captain and adds that after the captain is chosen, the superintendent will also evaluate whether the newly formed squad will function properly. Shikami explains that the minimum number of members in a squad is 7, meaning the captain must recruit at least 6 additional members. He advises Kannagi to begin considering which candidates he will recruit once he becomes a captain. Placing a hand on Kannagi's shoulder, Shikami offers himself as a squad member, emphasizing his strong physical abilities and loyalty. Then, with a smile, he walks away, wishing Kannagi the best for the remainder of the exam. As Shikami leaves, Azur approaches Kannagi and tells him to visit the crime scene. However, something in Azur's confident tone makes Kannagi realize that he has already identified the culprit. Azur confirms this, but states that he still needs solid evidence to make an official deduction. He then declares that they will now go on the offensive against the 12 apostles. The mage explains everything that has happened so far, and mentions that the detective has been assisting Kannagi with his deductions and methods. This irritates Hinoki, as the mage speaks in an indirect manner, but she does so intentionally to lighten the mood with her narration. They arrive at the crime scene, where Azur takes Kannagi's place and begins examining the area with great attention. As expected, everything aligns with his suspicions. With the victim's identity confirmed, he now also knows who the culprit is. Upon hearing this, Hinoki realizes that their opponent is indeed one of the 12 apostles, meaning he may have obtained the Book of Perdition, the same one possessed by the previous apostle. The mage then asks what they should do next. Just as Kannagi is about to respond, he suddenly feels a wave of energy and is transported to a misty realm. There, he encounters an elderly woman who, when questioned, simply claims to be an ordinary grandmother passing by. She asks about his investigation, and Kannagi reveals that a murder has been committed. The culprit took on another person's form and appears to be extremely skilled. Upon hearing this, the grandmother asks whether they should immediately find the culprit. However, Kannagi explains that they already know who it is, not based on mere speculation, but on solid and irrefutable evidence. Even so, he admits that he cannot reveal the truth yet. The grandmother is confused, believing that exposing and eliminating the culprit immediately would be the best course of action. Kannagi argues that although it may seem that way, there are actually 2 culprits instead of 1. He insists that it would be better to take them both down at once when they are in the same place. He decides to deal with it in the morning, but asks the elderly woman, who is in fact the superintendent, to refrain from interfering and simply observe. She smiles, wishes him luck, and reiterates that she is merely a passing grandmother who will not interfere. As she is about to leave, Kannagi reveals his name to her, prompting another smile from the elderly woman, a gesture of approval. Suddenly, a powerful wave of energy surges through him, and he regains control of his body. In an ultra-secret location, the assistant questions the superintendent, asking if it was wise to leave things as they are without intervening. The grandmother, however, reassures her that she doesn't mind, as Kannagi seems close to the truth and appears to have a well-crafted plan. She states that she is merely interested in seeing what he will do next. Then she orders the assistant to instruct the other officers to provide support to Kannagi if anything happens. The assistant agrees, but admits that even after walking near the residual traces, she did not find anything particularly interesting. Still, the superintendent places her trust in Kannagi's words without hesitation. The assistant is intrigued by why the superintendent has so much faith in him. In response, the old woman reveals that it is because of the confidence and determination she saw in his eyes. The following day, as Kannagi walks through the forest, Shikami joins him and explains the next test. This test will evaluate their performance by how well they would function as squad captains. Shikami already expects Erina to rely on her strategic abilities, but he expresses his support for Kannagi. In response, Kannagi thanks him with conviction, but suddenly, out of nowhere, asks Shikami why he deliberately withdrew from the exam. After a brief but ominous pause, Shikami turns to him and states that he changed his strategy midway. Instead of becoming a captain, he now prefers to operate in his own way under the command of a strong captain. Kannagi narrows his eyes suspiciously and accuses Shikami of doing this so that he could mercilessly eliminate all promising squad members. Taika is also present, hidden among the trees, just as a precaution. Hearing Shikami's suspicion, Shikami openly admits that he has no problem killing someone if it is necessary for a replacement without hesitation. He explains that during the third test, he had difficulty writing anything because his brain could only process and retrieve information that was already stored in it. That is why he ended up with a score of 0. Calling himself a fool, he accepts that it would have been better for him to simply eliminate Akirina instead. As they step into an open field, all the captains and squad members suddenly surround him. At the center, Todoroki is chained to the ground, while Ibik and another captain stand beside him. With his usual casual and arrogant posture, Ibik addresses Shikami as Lord Apostle and asks him to introduce himself. Realizing that his disguise has been exposed, Shikami lowers his voice and reveals his true identity. Eva, the 9th apostle. Eva then explains her ability, adding that she can also extract information directly from a host's brain without any difficulty. She states that she killed Shikami because he possessed the strongest physique among the contenders. Ibik smiles and asks whether Eva's goal is to sabotage the anti-prophecy from within. Eva confirms this, but admits that since she has now failed, she has no choice but to kill everyone present without exception. However, before doing so, she wants to know who discovered her true identity first. Ribik points to Kannagi, who is standing right beside Eva. With a malicious smile, Eva stares at him and comments that she never expected him to have the audacity to stand so close to her. Turning to face him fully, she radiates immense energy and demands to know who the hell he is. But how did all of this happen? Shortly before Shikami's body was possessed by Eva, Todoroki had told him that he would recommend him as a candidate for the new squad captain. This news greatly excited Shikami, although Todoroki warned him that the information was still confidential and would only be officially announced the following morning. Becoming even more excited, Shikami joked that despite it being a secret, they were practically shouting it out loud, which would definitely inform the others. Todoroki reassured him, stating that Shikami was one of the strongest individuals present in terms of physical power and would undoubtedly make an excellent captain. Seeing this level of confidence placed in him, Shikami agreed, feeling determined to do his best. However, just as he was greeting Todoroki with a fist bump, something suddenly sliced him to pieces. In an instant, Shikami was cut down right in front of Todoroki, leaving him completely shocked and unable to process what had just happened. Suddenly, a deep voice echoed through the air, mocking Shikami's weakness and questioning whether this truly was the standard for a squad captain candidate in the anti-prophecy unit. The figure then answered her own question, stating that the squad had only grown stronger thanks to the artifacts and the one who had provided them. Stepping forward, the figure introduced herself as Eva, one of the 12 apostles, and declared that she was looking forward to their future. Approaching Shikami's lifeless body, Eva activated her celestial demon ability, taking full control of it. As she channeled her power, Todoroki, with his mighty Vajra punch, crushed her entire body in a violent burst of blood. Trembling with rage, Todoroki breathed heavily, fury burning in his eyes, but to his shock, he suddenly heard applause behind him. The very Shikami he had just seen die was now clapping, praising Todoroki for managing to kill one of the 12 apostles with a single blow, exactly as expected of his master. Stunned, Todoroki turned to see Shikami standing there, seemingly alive. However, before he could even react, his body was instantly sliced in half by Eva, who had assumed Shikami's form in the blink of an eye. With a sinister smile, Eva activates the Necromancer's Dance artifact, resurrecting Todoroki as a corpse slave bound to her will. Now under Eva's control, Todoroki agrees to serve her, addressing her as Eva. However, before he can say anything else, she slaps him so hard that he nearly falls over. Correcting him, she demands that he call her Shikami instead, ensuring that no one will suspect her disguise in any way. Todoroki nods obediently, and the two share a dark, twisted laugh. Meanwhile, back at the crime scene, Kannagi and Isur continue their investigation. Using his unique ability, Theatrical Detective, Isur rewinds time to witness everything that happened there. This powerful skill allows him to replay past events at a crime scene, giving him first-hand view of what truly occurred. The only condition is that Isur himself must possess the evidence and personally deduce the culprit, not merely observe clues but reach a conclusion on his own. Additionally, this ability allows him to foresee future crimes before they happen. However, there is a significant drawback. If Isur fails to deduce a case correctly, the ability will be permanently lost, with no chance of recovery. This means that for the rest of his life he will never be able to use it again. As Isur explains this ability to the founders, they are disgusted by Eva's treacherous technique, killing someone and cruelly taking control of their body. The room then falls into stunned silence as everyone turns their gaze toward Kannagi, who is overflowing with mana, his rage completely uncontrollable. With burning determination, he vows that he will never forgive the apostle. Returning to the present, still seething with fury, Kannagi launches a devastating attack, a flash reflex punch enhanced by his penetration spell, aiming directly at Eva with all his strength. He also uses the Fist of Illuminance, and as his blow strikes Eva's face, a massive explosion of energy erupts, sending her flying through the air. She attempts to land, but the force is so immense that she is pushed backwards, struggling to regain her balance. However, as the dust settles, Kannagi is shocked to hear Eva laughing loudly, calling him cruel. Despite being hit by multiple techniques, she continues to mock him, mentioning his friendship with Shikami and questioning why he attacked her so mercilessly. Kannagi, having anticipated this, knows that he cannot defeat Eva with his current strength. Eva, still staggering from the recoil of the punch, declares that it is nothing, and scoffs at him, saying that his attacks feel like he is merely playing around without any seriousness. As the recoil subsides, Eva shouts that attacks like those will do nothing against her. Kannagi agrees, but reveals that he was never meant to be the one to defeat her. All he was doing was buying enough time for the founder mage to take control of his body. As the founder assumes control, she asserts her authority, and Kannagi's body becomes engulfed in energy. Seeing this, Eva realizes that Kannagi may be the one the satellites warned them about, someone who has become completely different, a new threat. Instead of feeling fear, she becomes even more excited. With a wicked grin, she summons hundreds of mummies from the sky, their terrifying screams echoing everywhere. She declares that life is boring until one faces death, and that they should fight with all their heart and soul. Aesir, watching the mummies descend, comments that they appear to be nothing more than empty shells, controlled by Eva using bodies she had previously taken. Laughing loudly, Eva boasts that all of these mummies possess the same physical strength as Shikami and challenges them to attack her without hesitation. Looking around, Ibik realizes that there are approximately 100 bodies, all at Shikami's level, which shocks a nearby candidate. Kannagi, witnessing this from within his own consciousness, finds it repulsive that Eva is using the bodies of those she trampled so cruelly. The mage beside him observes that he has changed, and so have the founders. As the mummies plunge toward the ground, the mage controlling Kannagi's body declares that Eva has gravely underestimated them. With that, she releases multiple electrical shocks, electrocuting all the mummies in midair and striking Eva as well. The mage takes this personally, as Eva summoned her minions and dropped them freely in front of her, forcing her to attack them before they could land. As the burning mummies rain down from the sky, Eva is left confused, wondering what Kannagi has just done. There are those who achieve unmatched precision through intense training, but Kannagi simply used his ability without hesitation and managed to strike every single target flawlessly. The mage instructs him to stay by her side and study her actions. The boy finds it incredible that even while using a weak body, she can still cast all her spells so efficiently. Calling him closer, the mage explains that while Kannagi had only been seeking power for himself, the founders, on the other hand, were eager to wield their power through the body. Kannagi is confused, unsure of what she is talking about. The mage continues to insist that even after everything, Kanag, intoxicated by an immense power, still felt closer to his goal, which was simply to become stronger at any cost. Meanwhile, all the founders are also intoxicated by Kanag's incomparable talent. However, after experiencing the tragedy of losing a friend, someone who entrusted Kanag with both faith and the future, the mage concludes that Kanag is angry deep within his heart, harboring a profound fury. Pointing at the founders, who are all visibly excited, the mage states that they all like the current version of Kanag. Eva, upon hearing this, becomes confused. She advances toward Kanag, declaring that the world is very simple and cannot be changed. The weak are trampled by the strong. At the moment she is about to attack, an electric spark erupts in front of her, stopping her mid-charge. Eva, stunned, looks around and notices the sky raining lightning and thunder. Mata reveals that many people think the same way as Eva, but he remembers witnessing an existence so powerful that it destroyed the tower, only to be manipulated and devoured by beasts from another dimension. Mata, who saw his comrades fall, now defends those who were weak, swearing to avenge them. As he walks toward Eva, Mata, still in control of Kanag's body, calls her frustrated, mocking her for lacking the strength to fight. Eva, however, is unable to stand, being continuously struck by lightning. Mata knows that although Kannagi trained in the mountains, laughing on the outside, deep down he longed for revenge. She assures that all the founders share the same belief, that Kannagi will one day reach the same level as them. Extending her hand forward, Mario assures him that if he needs help, they will provide it, and if he feels sorrow, he should point to its cause, and they will put an end to the prophecy. Without hesitation, Kannagi points at Eva in the air, and suddenly she is struck by lightning that tears her body into pieces. Everyone is left in shock as the instructor realizes that Kanag resembles Midori as a child, a monster in the making. As Eva lies shattered on the ground, she cannot comprehend how this young man not only destroyed all her lackeys, but also obliterated her body. Kanag walks toward her and asks if she now understands their strength, stating that he has many questions to ask. He adds that he knows many skilled individuals in interrogation and wants to talk with Eva about everything that has happened. However, in a deep voice, Eva reveals that she cannot fight Kanag in his current form and admits that her boss was right. Suddenly, a coffin emerges from the ground, and Eva calls it her trump card. Kanag is shocked as Eva explains that hundreds of years ago, one of the founders, known as the Reaper of 10,000 armies, was responsible for destroying the tower. To Kanag's horror, Eva reveals the body of Hinoki Raishuru inside the coffin. All the founders, especially Hinoki's spirit, are horrified that she possesses his corpse. Without a word, Mada casts a lightning spell that strikes the coffin. This shocks Hinoki, but Mada declares that this time it is real, as Eva has already taken control of Hinoki's body. Before them, Hinoki's corpse rises, wielding his blade. Eva, thrilled by her newfound power, declares that she can now fight on equal footing. Kanag, overwhelmed by the crushing pressure in the air, realizes that this aura is even stronger than what he felt while training with Itika. But that is not all. With a snap of her fingers, Eva summons hundreds of lackeys from the ground, calling them the second wave. Kannagi begins to worry, but Mada assures him, saying it is nothing. As Eva continues summoning her lackeys, a sudden explosion erupts behind her. Turning around, she sees Kannag's friends arriving. Itika is sweating, and the others are ready for battle. He is not alone. Eva becomes irritated, believing that Kannagi should have been alone during this trial. As she watches him speak, Kannagi notices that the voice and speech pattern of the corpse are identical to Hinoki's. Despite his friends joining the fight, they struggle to defeat the lackeys, as Eva remarks that these ones are far stronger. This time, the lackeys possess a physical hardening ability, and even when one of the members releases all their power, the attack leaves the lackey unharmed. To their horror, each lackey possesses a unique ability, making them formidable opponents. With their overwhelming numbers, the anti-prophecy members find it increasingly difficult to face head-on. Ribik, who has been closely observing the battle, activates her sound visualization release ability, summoning a phoenix of sound that obliterates a group of lackeys in an instant. However, despite the power of her attack, she remains cautious, realizing that the strength of each lackey is enhanced by their individual abilities. As if the chaos weren't enough, Todoroki suddenly breaks free from his chains and hurls one of the youngest members with crushing force. Ribik reacts just in time, rescuing them from certain death. Amid all of this, Eva revels in the chaos, enjoying herself immensely. She arrogantly declares that in a battle like this, only squad captains have a chance of surviving. Hearing this, Kanag turns to the other founders, seeking their opinions, but they all remain silent. He then turns to Mada, that asks her to let him take control of the body for a moment. She is surprised by the request, but ultimately agrees. Taking control, he confidently mocks Eva, accusing her of underestimating his friends, something she should never have done. Meanwhile, Hanada finds himself surrounded by lackeys, but he recalls Kannag's 7th lesson. Channeling his fist technique, he summons a dragon, using it as a source of power and as the foundation for his attacks. Some time ago, the spirit founder, Vance, had observed Ranita's more flexible muscular constitution, noting her tendency to rely on concentrated single-point strikes combined with agility. Another founder had argued that while it was not a bad technique, it could be far more effective with their guidance. Now, in the present, Ranita seamlessly integrates all the techniques they taught her, moving like a coiled snake, striking from every angle and obliterating the lackeys with precision. At the same time, Connie holds her ground, ready to face the horde of lackeys charging toward her. She remembers Kannag's advice on transmutation, a technique that converts an imperfect substance into perfection. In the past, she could only produce cheap, low-quality weapons, but now she uses her alchemical mastery to defy limitations, creating stone golems from the earth itself. This is something she mastered in Lesson 8, and with this, she can easily shatter the lackeys' hardened physiques. Kanag asks Enoch about Sue, and Enoch assures him that Sue is doing fine. While he may not be as brilliant as his brother, he has talents of his own. At this moment, he is skillfully wielding Hinoki's one-handed blade style combined with the Celestial Fall ability, cutting down a swarm of lackeys with a single powerful strike. Then he enhances the attack by merging it with Calendula, creating a flower-shaped slash that hits the lackeys across a wide area of effect. Watching this, Itika feels a deep sense of pride, impressed by how her student combines techniques and abilities so flawlessly. However, in her opinion, Kannagi's feats remain unparalleled due to the complexity of the combinations. As she continues cutting down lackeys lost in thought, she suddenly notices a massive fire tornado forming in front of her. The sight terrifies her, as it can only mean that the battle between Kannagi and the 12 apostles has already begun. However, as she focuses on the flaming vortex, her shock deepens when she realizes that Kannagi is fighting none other than the legendary founder Hinoki. Eva charges toward Kanag, wielding Hinoki's one-handed blade style combined with the wave-cutting blade technique. However, our boy effortlessly dodges the attack with the precision of Goku in Ultra Instinct. Despite missing its target, Eva's strike completely obliterates the ground beneath them. Kanag immediately counterattacks with Maid's lightning technique, but it barely affects someone as powerful as Eva. She retaliates with her devastating dice cut ability, slicing the entire battlefield into countless cubes, even taking down her own lackeys in the process. Nevertheless, our boy survives by leaping onto one of the floating cubes, remembering that he had already endured this very same ability with his own body before. Meanwhile, with the battlefield reduced to shifting cubes, the other members struggle just to remain standing. One member desperately clings to another who is about to fall into the abyss. Before they can pull her back, the dice cut severs her arm, causing her to fall. As she plummets in free fall, still clutching her comrade's severed arm, Kannagi notices them just in time. Without hesitation, he casts a bubble spell, lifting them all to safety. The spirit of M, growing increasingly concerned, turns to Hinoki and asks what they should do next. However, Hinoki simply leaves the decision to her, telling her to do whatever she wants. She agrees. And just as Eva releases the dividing cloud, a powerful beam of energy that engulfs the entire battlefield, even Rebik, a squad captain, is stunned by the sheer madness of it. Meanwhile, Eva is thrilled by the capabilities of a founder's body, marveling at how perfectly Hinoki's body is suited for battle. Despite this, Eva feels compelled to use an even stronger ability. Activating Hinoki's secret technique, she prepares to attack, but to her absolute shock, Kanag grabs her sword with his bare hand. Hinoki's spirit watches without being impressed, while Maid mockingly states that although Eva is using Hinoki's body, she is still weak. Hearing this, Eva screams in frustration, demanding to know how the legendary body of a founder could possibly be considered weak. Desperate for a stronger ability, Eva frantically searches through Hinoki's memories, trying to extract something more powerful. As she forces her way deeper into Hinoki's mind, her eyes begin to water, as if she had just witnessed something truly terrifying. Eva's tears come from the overwhelming memories of Hinoki's past, from when he was still alive during the era of the towers. Merely witnessing these memories pushes Eva to the brink of madness. In the vision, Hinoki destroys an entire tower with a single swing of his blade. However, despite this awe-inspiring feat, he grows colder and more distant with each passing battle. Eva struggles to comprehend how the wisdom and skill of a mere human could reach such an unfathomable level. Hinoki's memories are filled with countless acts of destruction, severing human bodies, slaying monsters, slicing through the sea itself, and even wounding the planet. The crushing weight of these memories overwhelms Eva's spirit, causing her to collapse under the pressure. She desperately wonders where she should go and how she can become stronger, but the burden is unbearable. Her very soul begins to fracture, as if it is about to shatter into nothingness. Hinoki's spirit, calm and unconcerned, casually remarks that Eva's spirit should simply break apart. However, another founder quickly warns that if that happens, she will lose all control and massacre everything around her. To their horror, that is exactly what occurs. Eva's spirit shatters completely. She releases a piercing scream so powerful that its force is felt even in the distant city of Takasak. The overwhelming strength of the scream triggers an immediate evacuation as residents check their phones and discover that the source of the aura is coming from Nagano City Hall, an astonishing 100 kilometers away. Despite the great distance, the shockwaves still reach them. Panic spreads rapidly as people fear that the end of the world has arrived or that a monstrous and terrible entity has emerged. Back on the battlefield, as Eva's scream echoes, the very rocks begin to levitate from the ground. The crushing aura bears down on everyone present, weighing heavily on their shoulders. Weaker members begin to writhe violently, their bodies completely pinned to the ground by her sheer and overwhelming power. Kanag, witnessing the entire scene, shouts for Hinoki, but the spirit remains completely unfazed, still relaxing as if absolutely nothing were happening. He simply responds that he left everything in the mage's hands, and the mage fully agrees. Meanwhile, as Eva advances towards Kanag, the mage raises her sleeve, revealing the seal of truth on her arm. With unshakable and absolute confidence, she declares that if she needs to use Kanag's body, she will end all of this with a single strike. As she releases the seal of truth, Kanag's body begins to radiate an immense and overwhelming energy. Witnessing this, Kani is in complete and total disbelief. The alchemist spirit within Kanag speaks, telling him that he and Kani must observe very carefully. He explains that whether it is magic or alchemy, they are the true seekers of truth. At this critical moment, Kanag will reach one of those fundamental truths. As he continues speaking, Kanag's arms become marked with the same seals the mage once bore on her own body. The alchemist spirit wonders whether Kanag's body can truly withstand fragments of the truth, or if it will collapse entirely under the weight of such power. Meanwhile, Eva's soul has already shattered into countless fragments, and the only thing driving her body is the lingering residue of her spirit. Her body moves instinctively, guided by primal impulses, much like a wild animal. Hinoki, once mature and composed, abandoned his body to this state long ago. This peculiar phenomenon is known as the ignorance of truth. As Eva grows increasingly enraged, she releases a wave of dark energy, her aura twisting and distorting the air around her in a terrifying manner. Witnessing this, the mage foresees a future in which the energy becomes so overwhelmingly powerful that it destroys everyone, including Kanag, and even affects people far beyond the battlefield, across the entire continent. At that moment, Eva could very well be the end of the world itself. Recognizing the extreme gravity of the situation, Kanag acknowledges the imminent danger. The mage then activates one of her most powerful abilities, the Magus of Truth, a technique designed specifically to counter the abilities of its target. It is so incredibly powerful that the world itself can barely withstand its immense and crushing force. As Eva gathers dark energy in her arm and swings it at Kanag, he stops the attack without the slightest effort. To her complete shock, he firmly grabs her hand. At that exact moment, the mage channels an attack of searing light, creating a powerful and intense explosion of light between them, completely engulfing the entire area. As the dust settles, Eva is reduced to nothing more than a charred skeleton, while Kanag still holds her hand firmly in place.